I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a moment of silence. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I might take just the liberty of a minute to acknowledge Veterans Day. It's Thursday. I'm going to acknowledge those folks that are here. They're veterans. We appreciate your service. And maybe if you could just raise your hand and identify yourself, we'd love to acknowledge you. Anyone a veteran in here? One veteran, very good. I appreciate you to Interim County Manager and Commissioner Norris Gentry as a veteran as well. Thank you. Appreciate your service. Craig, I didn't catch you. Sorry, Doctor.
Okay, sir.
Thank you, Doctor.
We have some amendments for the agenda.
Chairman, we need to amend item F will now become the Gibbons Estates. And item F, currently on the agenda, will become item 10G. Also, under the manager section, we will need to add a Golden Leaf update and an update on the Ivy River Weaverville water continuing discussions. That's the only amendments I have.
Sure. Everybody good with that?
Make a motion to amend as presented.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. We will move on to approval of the October 12th, 2021 regular meeting. October 26th, 2021 special meetings. I have time to look at those.
I'll move that they be approved as most recently revised in the handout minutes that we've received prior to the meeting.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? All right. We'll move on. We have two public comments tonight. So first public comments is regular public comments. The second one will be done item number 4 on a public hearing. So the ones that signed up for regular public comment, Tom Reddick. Comment? Yes.
And please make sure to speak into the microphone.
I'll be right there.
On the Zoom thing.
Thank you.
And you got 3 minutes, and Mandy's keeping the time. So whenever you start, she starts 3 minutes.
Okay. I was here at the last, when you had your workshop meeting, when you talked about noise ordinance. So I know you'll be going over it, revising the noise ordinance. So I'm not sure if any of you live across the street from or live close to any wedding venues, but I've lived here for 27 years, and it's been a quiet residential agricultural area. And all of a sudden, there's an unpermitted wedding venue across the street from my house. You're welcome to come by anytime you want when there's a wedding going on, listen to the noise, listen to how loud it is. We probably live 300 yards from it, and you can hear the DJ people hollering and the boom boom of the music. You can hear it outside, and you can hear it inside the house when the windows are closed. I said, we all live in the country for peace and quiet and space. I said, we chose to live in a residential agricultural area, not a business district. We all know that something like a wedding venue across from our house definitely hurts property values. It certainly isn't a desired area to live. I said, it's allowed a lot of traffic, and it's all lit up. I said, it goes until 11 o'clock. I said, that's way too late to be having to listen to that. We pay our taxes. It's not like you'll reduce our taxes because of it. You know, why should we get the short end of the stick when others come into the neighborhood and don't get permits and put a wedding venue across the street and put profit in their pockets? So I'm sure many of you enjoy sitting on your porch, especially after a long day of work. I said, or in the summertime. Well, it's a different story when you have long hours of weddings and music going on multiple days of the month, all night long. I said, my cousin lives on my property. She's in her 60s, and she actually leaves when there's weddings because of the noise right across the street, and she feels unsafe in her own house. This particular venue across from me didn't apply for permits. They didn't get any neighbors' approval for anything. They didn't talk to the neighbors. I said all they wanted to do was open it and ask for forgiveness rather than the county's permission. We've all been to weddings and know that there can be drinking, people allowed going to their cars. I said there's late traffic and the cleanup. I mean, there's children living in the area, elderly people. People have to get up and work in the morning. It's ridiculous that we have to listen to that. Any noise-producing wedding venues shouldn't be in a residential agricultural area. We ask, no, we beg you, when you look at the noise ordinance, that you consider stricter noise restrictions on these barn weddings that are popping up all over the county and in close proximity to our quiet neighborhoods, and aware that not only the noise, but where they should be located as well. And make sure they're regulated rather than just popping up and not getting permits to do it. I said, this county is growing fast, and we need to look at this now rather than letting everybody open these things and then look at it and say, how are we going to control it going backwards? Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next is Joanne Ribby.
Good evening. My name's Joanne Rebick. I am a resident. I live on Watershed Road in Ebbs Chapel, the Fire District. A couple questions for you. I'll be brief. And it's regarding the county comprehensive plan, which you all are well aware it was approved 11 years ago. So my question, first question is, are there near future plans to update it? I haven't seen it, I assume. I haven't seen anything in the paper. And the next question is, how will that process work? And how can residents of the community have input in that plan? I know I reviewed the current comprehensive plan. I know there were town meetings. If there were to get input across our county, are there other ways that residents can participate? And thank you. I'm not going to I would like to support what the previous person resident spoke of, the sound ordinances, and we're all aware of how quickly, our county is growing and being proactive rather than, reactive. So thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, we do not normally engage, but if you would please leave your email and phone number with Mandy at the back. The office will be happy to reach out to you and later and provide you the answers to some of the information.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Next on the agenda is Miss Sarah. Public hearing, Project Johnny 50.
I interrupt just a minute. I thought I signed up. I came in. How long it take? 3 minutes.
Not on the public comment. You signed up on the one for the public hearing.
Well, I like public comment. Could change that.
I'm okay with this.
Okay, we're
You
good.
mistakenly signed the wrong
We're
sign.
good.
It's 3 minutes either way.
Sorry about that.
We're good.
Honorable Commissioners, we all appreciate your service to the county, and I'd like to address this August group because you have the authority and influence to determine what happens in the county. This is a subject I felt compelled to bring to your attention. It is a subject that is affecting us all, and especially the children. My subject is COVID-19 vaccine that has been approved by the FDA for children ages 5 to 11. In the committee on the CDC, Dr. Eric Rubin, editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, is on that committee. The vote was 17-0 with one abstention. Dr. Rubin said, I quote, "We're never going to learn how safe this vaccine is unless we start giving it. That's the way it goes. That's how we found out about rare complications of other vaccines. End of quote. These kids, over 40% of them, are estimated to already have the immunity from COVID-19. Survival rate of children is 99.998%. Ivory soap only counts 99.44%. Dr. Martin Hildorf, professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, says, I quote, I don't think children should be vaccinated for COVID. It is not a big risk for children. They do not spread COVID and risk few side effects. End quote. Dr. Harry Reich, professor of epidemiology at Yale School of Medicine, he advises parents to remove children from schools that force students to get shots. He says, I quote, there is no choice. Your child's life is on the line. End of quote. Dr. Reich may have heard the story of little Maddie DeGari. Her parents, Stephanie and Patrick DeGari, enrolled Maddie and her two brothers in Pfizer's clinical trial. I think there were over 100, maybe 140 in that trial. Maddie, healthy, and after her second dose, she was reduced to crippling, screaming pain. She went into the emergency room. She felt as if her heart were being ripped from her shoulders. She was hospitalized several times and treated as a mental patient. She was told it was unrelated to the shot. Finally, Pfizer reported it to the FDA, where it was listed as, quote, functional abdominal pain, end quote. The DeGaris reported to the CDC and FDA through VAERS in June of this year, not 2021. They heard nothing. They reached Dr. Nath, chief of NIH for neurological disorders and strokes. His response was, I quote, sorry to hear of your daughter's illness. We have heard a lot of cases of neurological complications from the vaccine, and we'll be glad to share our experience with them. End of quote. Dr. Robert Malone, a pioneer of mRNA technology used in the Pfizer and Moderna, says to stop all vaccinations.
Time's up. Thank
Can I give y'all a copy of this? I think it's very important.
Thanks, sir.
Oh, I got two. There you go.
Thank you, sir.
Everybody else got two?
Sir.
Thank you. All right.
That's mine.
Oh,
Yeah. All right, we're good.
don't mean, thanks, fellas. Appreciate all you're doing.
Thank
We're
you.
good. Thank you.
Next up is item number 4, Sarah.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you all for the opportunity to speak tonight regarding an economic development incentive for Project Johnny 5.0, which we have discussed a few times in closed session. Economic development projects are exciting because it shows that the work this county is doing are starting to thread together so that our citizens can grow and thrive. Tonight, we are considering a $69,995 incentive for a company interested in investing in Madison County with an over $3.3 million in net new taxes and 40 new jobs over the next 5 years. The way this will work is the company will make these investments in capital improvements and business personal property that are above the current value of the property, pay those taxes to Madison County, and then if they have met the requirements of this incentive, they'll be entitled to a 65% reimbursement for the next 7 years. For this project, the company is working on securing grant funding from the state and thus will need to be announced by the state. The grant that's being pursued from the state will involve funding to support the company's growth in Madison, also dependent on meeting job requirements, but also has funding for workforce development that will go to our community college system, workforce development, and sales tax incentives. This company has interest and intent to support the community in ways that will help several initiatives that are currently underway and make for not just taxes and jobs, but also vision and future. The incentive will be reviewed annually by the county, and if the company falls short of the investment of the percentage of the incentive, it will be reduced in accordance with the county's incentive policy. The structure is in accordance with the incentive policy that was previously adopted by this board.
Sir. So, nobody signed up for the public comment for this.
People still have to open a public hearing.
Yes. We're making a motion to open a public hearing.
Second.
5-0.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye.
Sir, just as a point of clarity for everyone, thank you for all your work. I know you helped facilitate a lot of this, and it's a tremendous opportunity for this company, but also for our county and moving forward economic development. Just a point of clarity that maybe you can share with everyone. The process for this, as far as the name and the identity not being revealed, there's questions people have about why they don't have the very particular information. There's reasons for that. Maybe you just share briefly on that. And also just a very quick tidbit for the folks here to know that these efforts, while it sounds like somebody's getting a big tax break, the reality of it is we're getting enhanced value from the property. And in essence, we're not only not getting a reduction in tax revenues, but actually an increase. And I know that you and the folks at the Economic Development Board, that group, have done a tremendous job at not only bringing this opportunity, but bringing actual increased revenues, not just from employees, but also from the building itself. So we just share briefly.
Sure. So typically these function under project code names until a certain point. And that point could vary. In this case, for this project, the state is potentially putting in more money than the county is, and the governor likes to announce those projects themselves once they get them to that point. But they remain confidential to protect the company from a competing business maybe coming at them with something unexpected. They might take the spot from them or do something else in their supply chains that would cause a disruption in their business model. It could affect their lending. It could also bring a competing economic development group in to try and poach that company from us. So that's how, this is one of the things that we're protected through General Statute 158 that allows us to do economic development and work with businesses in the way we do. So we are very excited about this company, both, personally and for economic development, because it's not, in this case, it's not just jobs and capital investment. I believe that they're going to do more than that for the future of this community. And so we're excited to announce them publicly as soon as we can. At this point, we're kind of we're bound a little bit waiting for the state to come through on their end.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. So I have a resolution to present to you to move forward this incentive agreement. That whereas North Carolina General Statute 157 and 7.1 authorizes counties to undertake economic development project by extending assistance to a company. Furthermore, this company is a manufacturing company planning to locate or locating in Madison County. The incentive agreement we are offering is $69,995.96 up to over a 7-year period, based and contingent on capital investment of at least $3.38 million in building and capital investment over the next 5-year period, and the creation of 40 full-time jobs with an average weekly wage of $687. We have duly advertised this public hearing and participate in and extend county general funds for an economic development incentive agreement between the county and Project Johnny 5.0. Manufacturing and distribution facility by Johnny 5.0 in Madison County will stipulate the local economy, promote business, create permanent jobs in the county, and increase the property tax base and revenues therefrom, and increase business prospects in the county. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Madison County Board of Commissioners, after duly and advertised public hearing held, finds that the proposed economic development incentive agreement as outlined for Project Johnny 5.0 stimulate local economy, promote business, create permanent jobs in Madison County, and increase the local property tax base and revenues therefrom. Be it further resolved, do you want me to read all of this? The next one? Good.
I'm sorry. We're having trouble hearing. People can't hear.
Oh.
I don't know if it's the microphone.
The Zoom people,
The audience.
the audience. Get closer
That's
to it.
actually only for Zoom. There is no PA in the room. So.
Okay,
So if you want to turn if you want to just kind of turn the whole thing.
Yeah, address the.
address the public here. So be it further resolved that Madison County Board of Commissioners hereby approves and authorizes Madison County participation in an economic development incentive project to aid and encourage Project Johnny 5.0 to locate a manufacturing and distribution facility, the state-of-the-art high-performance routers and plasma tables in Madison County. Not to exceed $69,995 from available revenues in the general fund over a 7-year period, based off their investment of $3.38 million in capital investment over a 5-year period, and the creation of at least 40 full-time jobs that are at or above our county's median wage.
Chairman, I move that we approve the resolution as proposed.
Second.
Discussion.
Go up there, thank you.
Thank you.
All those working on that.
And thanks to
Make a
Johnny
motion to
5.0 as well.
close the hearing.
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to close the hearing.
Second.
And Sarah,
Thank
thank you. The last 2 days went well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Next on the agenda is Tyler Ross, Soil and Water Director.
Hi, Tyler.
Actually got you in person this time.
Must be living right.
Nothing freestanding.
Yeah, that's good. You won't have to see me too long. Thankfully, I brought Jen Hawes with me. She's with Mountain Valley's RC&D, and she's going to do a presentation on a program we're working on starting called Resilient Madison. And I'll be up here for questions after, but she's a lot better public speaker than I am. So, thank you.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to share this information with you tonight. Do you mind if I put my water bottle over?
You go right ahead, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. I might do that. So imagine a county where people are comfortable to live with fire and other natural disasters. Residents learn how to prepare their properties and mitigate their risks so that they're not afraid of their neighbor's debris pile getting out and starting a forest fire. They gain confidence knowing that their community has their back in case the next storm ruins their livelihood. I'm here to talk about a partnership that has been recently formed to promote resilient communities and landscapes in Madison County, North Carolina. Oh, thank you. Awesome. So my name is Jen Haas. I'm a wildfire preparedness coordinator for Mountain Valley's RC&D, or Resource Conservation and Development Council. We're a nonprofit organization building private and public partnerships to conserve land and water resources. We serve 8 counties in western North Carolina, including Madison County, which is our home base. So we focus on natural resource conservation through hands-on projects pertaining to water quality, energy efficiency and renewable energy on farms, forest health, and community wildfire preparedness. We've installed native plant gardens at the Mars Hill Elementary School and the Madison Early College, and we help landowners stabilize their stream banks using live stakes. We also help farmers implement PV solar power and other renewable energy systems on their farms to make their operations more efficient. As an RC&D, we strive to bring partners and local resources together with private landowners to accomplish a common goal for a more resilient community. We couldn't do this without our partners, including the U.S. Forest Service, the North Carolina Forest Service, the Nature Conservancy, state extension offices, local governments, fire departments, soil and water, and community members. So a couple of months ago, the North Carolina Forest Service Madison County Ranger Bo Dossett and the Madison County Soil and Water Conservation District Director Tyler Ross and their soil conservationist Richard Gustafson called together a meeting to discuss building resilience in Madison County. How can we provide better resources and opportunities for the community members to build resilience? We want to come together and discuss the gaps and develop strategies to combine assets and fill the gaps. How do we create healthier forests, combat invasive species, and prepare for future flooding and other human-caused or natural disasters? With our powers combined, we can build a stronger community. So we formed the Resilient Madison Partnership. What is community resilience? Communities are increasingly complex, and so are the challenges they face. Human-caused and natural disasters are more frequent and costly. Factors like climate change, globalization, increased urbanization can bring disaster-related risks to greater numbers of people. Addressing these threats calls for an approach that combines what we know about preparing for disasters and what we know about actions that strengthen communities every day. Community resilience focus on enhancing the preparedness of communities and their surrounding landscapes to reduce negative impacts of disaster. So one part of our agenda is building resilient communities. Our communities need to adapt to fire. Not only do residents need to identify the risks of their home ignition on their property, but they also need to mitigate their risks. So home assessments, which is a free service offered by the North Carolina Forest Service, is an opportunity for residents to identify their risks and prioritize the mitigation actions necessary to reduce their risk. So that their home won't ignite if a wildfire is nearby, and the wildfire will decrease intensity as it reaches the home. So no, I did not say that wildfires will stop happening because of these efforts. Fire belongs on the landscape. It's a part of the natural cycle, but we must prepare and adapt to fire on the landscape. And I'll talk more about this on the next slide. We need to know how to burn debris safely, how to properly have a campfire or put out a campfire, and dispose of stove ash. This knowledge will help prevent catastrophic wildfires from happening, as 85% of wildfires are caused by humans. Mountain Valley's RC&D currently has a mitigation cost share program. We provide 40% reimbursement for residents who perform wildfire mitigation within 100 feet of their home. This has been a really successful program, and it's built to incentivize residents to take action. Again, more on this on the next slide. Prescribed burning can make our community safer and forests healthier, but it can also create an opportunity for landowners to work together and train each other to properly use fire on the landscape for land management. We want Madison County to bring back a culture of living with fire. Many generations have lived this way for many years. So landowners are aware of the precautions to take when burning debris. Some even use prescribed burns to manage their land. Fire can bring us together and make us stronger. So wildfire is not on the forefront of most residents here in the Southeast. That's the stuff that happens out west, right? Well, North Carolina actually has the most wildland-urban interface, or WUI, than anywhere else in the lower 48 states. So the WUI is where forested land intermingles with human development. When people move into the woods, that raises their home's wildfire risk. So a lot of Mountain Valley's work focuses on engaging with community members about the relationship between fuels on the landscape and their home's ignition zones. We assist the North Carolina Forest Service with these home assessments, pointing out action items residents can take to reduce their wildfire risk. These one-on-one conversations help us build our relationships with community members, hearing their questions and concerns about how to live with fire. Removing dead vegetation from within 30 feet of the home, like leaf litter and fallen branches, cleaning gutters and roofs of debris, thinning the surrounding forests. These are all mitigation tasks residents can do to reduce their home's ignition potential during a wildfire. So we help support that. When someone says to me, I don't want them to do prescribed burns because I'm afraid my house is going to burn down, I always try to flip that around and say, well, then let's work on creating defensible space around your home so that you're more comfortable with fire on the landscape, because it's not going away. Sorry. So the cost share program that we have, we've learned that landowners need an incentive to complete this mitigation work. Wildfire education alone is not effective in getting the mitigation work done. So thanks to grant funding from coalitions and collaboratives, an organization based in Colorado, we can offer this 40% cost share for landowners and homeowners to implement mitigation actions within 100 feet of their homes. We also have a wildfire mitigation tool cache available with leaf blowers and handsaws if homeowners want to take matters into their own hands. The cache can be used by a group of neighbors or for a community event or even a church or scout service project. This is free use. It's important for landowners to take responsibility for their risk and invest time and energy into preparing their home. The reality is there are more and more people blindly moving into the WUI without acknowledging their risk. So there may not be enough resources available to save every home during a wildfire event, so we have to prepare our homes now. So as mentioned before, fire is a natural part of our woodlands, wetlands, and pastures and frequently occurs in North Carolina. Many plant and wildlife species require fire to remain healthy and thrive. Years of fire suppression and exclusion have dramatically changed our forest communities. These forest ecosystems previously shaped by fire often lack much of the herbaceous diversity that is needed by many vertebrate and invertebrate wildlife species. So prescribed fire or control burning is a management tool used to help manage weeds and restore native habitat. It can also help prevent dangerous and damaging wildfires by safely removing heavy fuel loads. Prescribed burning also creates a mecca of opportunity for community awareness and engagement. So it can show people how fire can be used for good to restore natural landscapes. Another piece of Resilient Madison is building more resilient landscapes. So we can prioritize fuel treatments to reduce wildfire intensity, structure ignition, and the extent of the wildfire. This can include burning, thinning, pruning, chipping, and mechanically removing fuels to reduce the amount and continuity of burnable vegetation. For ecological purposes, we want to restore and maintain fire-adapted ecosystems like they were and to achieve fire-resilient landscapes. We want to manage invasive species better in the county, miscanthus or Chinese silvergrass being one of the biggest threats. We also have the threat of the spotted lanternfly, which I was happy to see all the flyers in the room here. They are rapidly reproducing and spreading from Pennsylvania. This pest feeds on over 70 plant species, including fruit, ornamental, and woody trees, with tree of heaven as its preferred host, which is also another invasive. It has been spotted in Virginia. It's not in North Carolina yet. Another thing is cross-boundary projects. When times are tough, our natural tendency is to hunker down. Battle lines are drawn, organization silos get taller, world views shrink, attitudes narrow, and positions tighten. All too often, boundaries create borders that divide us into us versus them. The result can be fractured relationships, diminished resources, suboptimal results, and divisive conflict. When we work together to solve problems, we develop common goals and increase effectiveness. We make sure both sides or all sides benefit. This can be difficult when we consider public-private land ownership boundaries and working with different agencies, as trust is a huge factor. But building those cross-boundary relationships is key. So this cross-boundary approach applies to landscapes as well. Invasive species and wildfire do not abide by boundary lines. When there's an abundance of miscanthus growing on one person's property, it's only a matter of time it's going to cross into their neighbor's land or into the national forest. Building relationships and resources before a disaster strikes will only make us stronger when it happens. So miscanthus, as you've heard before, miscanthus is a wildfire threat here in Madison County. It is considered the county's wildfire grass because it's highly flammable and can fuel massive wildfires, which is a danger to life and property. 80% of wildfires in Madison County are where miscanthus infestations exist. So fires from this grass can get hot enough to scar and kill timber, standing timber, reducing the value and area of forest land in Madison County. It also smothers native grasses and shrubs, destroying critical wildlife habitat and decreasing valuable livestock forage species. This is an obvious threat to our county's landscape and livelihood, and the spread of miscanthus must be managed, starting with helping residents identify this dangerous plant and teaching them methods to kill it. So the Madison County Soil and Water just signed an agreement with the U.S. Forest Service Appalachian Ranger District called the Good Neighbor Authority Agreement. So the Soil and Water staff have agreed to support the U.S. Forest Service in combating invasive species in the county on national forest and private land. And they will start with trying different methods of killing miscanthus at the U.S. Forest Service District Office. So although most of the points I mentioned today relate to fire, our community must be prepared for and strong enough to recover from other disasters too, like floods, droughts, landslides, waste spills. And the more we come together and support each other, the more long-term resilience we'll build to combat threats to our community. We envision our community and landscape to be more fire adapted. We want to build on existing partnerships and leverage our resources to become better together. We want to involve the community in these efforts. We want to create a teaching environment where we're teaching them, they're sharing their experiences and expertise, and then we want to encourage them to teach each other. We all agree that we should increase the use of fire as a tool to better manage the land. And lastly, how? How are we going to carry out this vision into fruition? We want to hold community meetings, coming together to talk about wildfire preparedness, what it means, and how to identify these threats, including tree disease and pests. We want to facilitate conversations on prioritizing our risks so that we can strategically take action to reduce our risk. We want to organize education events such as Learn and Burn demonstrations, sharing the good use of fire and equipment and techniques involved in implementing a successful burn. Interested residents can sign up for a certified burner course so that they can implement and burn safely on their own land and again teach each other. Invasive plant control workshops, so how to treat invasives encroaching on your land. Do you have to spray? Are there other methods to remove and discourage invasive species? And facilitating a prescribed burn association is a big goal of ours. So this is an opportunity for neighbors to help neighbors to achieve management goals. We want to have people in Madison County learn to live with fire, use it for good, and appreciate its use. And with that, we have committed to work together as the Resilient Madison Partnership to promote and build resilient communities and landscapes in Madison County. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
We're gonna start control burns.
They happen. The North Carolina Forest Service does them, and like I said, many landowners already do it as well. But more of that would be great. It is complex in this landscape because there's steep hills and the fuel loads and miscanthus, and but we want to teach landowners how to do it successfully because I think it's going to be a better management tool.
I believe Tyler, you may have shared this, that there's actually some funding coming down the pipe to do some invasive plant eradication.
We recently actually fill us back in.
Yes, sir. That's
What
the
we-
Good Neighbor Authority agreement that we entered in with the Appalachian Ranger District is, we're gonna be working at the 9 acres up there at the Forest Service office in Morrisville.
It's fun.
Yeah, well, we got a lot of opportunity there. So we're gonna do different, test plots, I guess is the best way to put it, and just section out areas for finding the best methods and tools to, get rid of it.
If you need another place, I got some place in Grapevine, you're welcome to come and start anytime.
In all honesty, that would not be a bad idea for us to have landowners let us know, because there's
I'm your man.
quite a bit.
Well, that's the question I have. Is there going to be opportunity for private citizens? I know that you guys identified some areas, Bone Camp, East Fork, Grapevine, Metcalf Creek, and areas that were high density areas, especially for some of these river or creek related and also fire related invasive species. Is there going to be any funding for that to take place on private properties for that eradication?
Yes, sir. So with agricultural land that is already in the USDA system,
Yes.
they're able to sign up through EQIP. The problem that we're trying to address is finding funding for non-agricultural private land, because that's the rub. And so we're working with a couple different agencies to try and figure out the funding for that. But as far as it goes for agricultural producers, yes, that's not going to be a problem at all. The other benefit of us doing the miscanthus research is right now within the standards and specifications for the USDA, they don't have any real great defined eradication measures for miscanthus. So that's the other reason why we're entering in this, so that we can have something that they can actually, do a cost share on.
I know that's just one small part of the equation with this program you're talking about, but I also know that 80% of the fires that our fire service are having to deal with relate to that at some point. It's pretty significant.
And I think our number one priority once we get funding is to stop the spread of it. So focusing on Hot Springs, which is a very fire-prone area, stop it from really taking a hold there. And then we can kind of scale in towards Mars Hill to try to work on that.
So Jen, there's a limit though to, I know there's a 40% match, but it's limited to 2,000, is that correct?
That is correct. And that round of funding ends at the end of the year, but we are putting in an application this week for next year's funding, and that cap will go up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very thorough. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Very
you.
well done,
Thank you,
guys.
guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, Tyler, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to be here.
Next on the agenda is Caleb Spindler, Director of
Or something.
Caleb.
Hi.
Good evening, guys.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good. Keep us up all night. It's part of the fun, so thank you. So the purpose of this presentation tonight, I'm here with Tim Henman from Mission Critical Partners, also Phil Penny's in the audience with us tonight from Mission Critical Partners. We contracted them to do an assessment of our current public safety radio network. The slideshow will be a presentation of the results of that. Tim's going to quarterback the presentation. We're going to discuss the current radio environment, evaluate the shortcomings of it, and there'll be recommendations for the improvements of the public safety radio network. Discussion will also include the methodology used in the assessment process. And with that, I'll let Tim take over. There'll be a good bit of data here, and we'll have time for questions and discussion about that as well. So with that, Tim.
Yeah, I'll try to keep things moving a little bit for you. I'm an engineer, so I get into details real easily. I'll do my best not to.
If you don't mind, you might need to speak up. Apparently, this room is a
Bit of a-
very dense. Yeah.
Okay.
If you don't mind, the rest.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. All right, so quick agenda, what I'm going to speak through, a bit of the purpose of the assessment that we did, a brief rundown of kind of our methodology we used, what we found, and as a result of our analysis, recommendations made, and then I'll kind of open the floor up for questions. So the purpose of the assessment was to do a high-level assessment to evaluate your current VHF system compared to public safety standards. As a result of kind of our findings, we were going to explore other frequency bands in addition to the frequency band used today by the county radio system. And then look at all other options, different technologies, including P25 radio system, which is a public safety standard for radio communications. So we broke our needs assessment down into 8 kind of broad categories. They're up on the screen right now. The big ones that came up here were coverage and capacity, but other topics included the frequency spectrum, the range of frequencies used, the overall network, how the sites are interconnected, the network between all the sites, the infrastructure, that would be the radio equipment up at the sites today, that are the radio transmitter sites. Interoperability, do county units talk to neighboring agencies? The subscriber devices themselves, so that's the portable radios that are handheld or the mobiles that are found in vehicles. And then the life cycle and maintenance, how is the equipment cared for? How is it maintained? So for coverage, we did find that coverage throughout the county is fairly poor today. There's a few reasons for that. The biggest reason is that the current radio system is located in the very high frequency spectrum, or VHF for short. VHF is a pretty old frequency band. It's got a lot of noise, which effectively reduces the coverage for the system. There's a few coverage maps that were included in the report that I have on the screen here. The far left one shows a portable or handheld radio trying to talk back to the system. And it does show some degradation due to that elevated noise floor. So you can see it's fairly poor coverage throughout the county. The mobile coverage is a little bit better. Oh, sorry. It was a little shocking.
It's all good. We had a little fire over here. I can't believe how poor that coverage is on 4 minutes. It's ridiculous. It is really bad.
There's another factor in the coverage, which the lower right coverage map shows. I did a best server coverage map, so this shows what is the strongest site out of the three serving each area in the county. And you can see in the central part of the county, there's a lot of trade-off between the three different colors. So somebody traveling through that area won't know which site they should actually be talking on. Now, I'm going to try to make this work. We have
Say that again now?
Yes.
Oh, that part? Back that up?
Yeah, this map right here.
Right?
So these three colors represent, like the yellowish green is the Big Knob site. So if you're in a green area, you're best served by the Big Knob site.
Okay.
Same for Rich Mountain, which is purple, and Duncan, which is kind of the pink red color. So you can see in the central part, there's a lot of the colors kind of change pretty rapidly. So if you're having to manually switch which side you're talking on a radio, in this area, you might be talking on a site you think is closest, but you're actually better served by a different site. And really, there's no way for a user to know.
It just automatically switches.
Well,
they don't.
no,
They
because
don't.
they're required to manually switch to that.
Right, okay. I understand. Currently, they have to manually switch,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah, so they may still be trying to talk to Rich Mountain when they're in an area that's actually green, and they'd be better off. And really, you can't expect someone to have this kind of knowledge as they travel through the county.
Right.
That's this one.
It's not simulcast.
Correct, yes, which we'll get to a little bit later, thank you. All right, so we do have the kind of results of all the coverage. We have some audio samples that kind of help illustrate that. And let's see if I can get that to play. All right, yeah. Oh, it's already done now. We'll get it. I'll play him in a little bit here. We'll get him set up on a laptop. I'll kind of continue on for now.
No, I think he's wired on. I'm going to see what
Yeah. In addition to coverage, capacity is another issue. Today, the three sites operate on the same frequency, and they have different PL or private line tones, as they're called. This is kind of a subaudible tone that the radio listens for, and it will open up when it hears it. So in essence, users can be talking over top of each other and not realize it just because they don't quite hear each other. So that does cause a fair amount of routine congestion on the channel. As part of our report, we did an analysis of how many simultaneous talk paths may be needed by the number of users in the county. It took into account, shifting where not every radio user is always on the system at the same time. And we did estimate that about 4 simultaneous talk paths will give what's called a 1% rate of service. That means you have about a 1% chance you might get a busy signal. And even then, it's less than a second before you get to talk. In addition to capacity, we looked at the spectrum. So, as I said before, VHF is a fairly noisy spectrum, and it's one of the older frequency bands in use, so it's not planned out very well. UHF is the next highest up, ultra high frequency. It is a little bit better planned out. They have matched transmit and receive frequencies for those that are always offset by the same amount, so it's easier to design a system with really good coverage. And then there's also the 7 and 800 megahertz frequency band used by public safety. That band in this kind of terrain doesn't play too well. It's a little more line of sight, so the rough terrain makes it really hard to get coverage in that band. For the network, as it is today, there really is no network for all the sites. They're not interconnected in any kind of way. The dispatch center actually talks to them over the air through control stations for their dispatch capabilities. So all the sites do act independently, and there really is no data capacity for the sites either. So we're ready.
Yeah, we're ready whenever.
Okay.
You want to hold that? So these are just some examples of radio
You'll see
interference.
this feedback.
And this you'll hear, you won't be able to understand a lot of this, and that's what we deal with every single day. So that's someone talking, and that's public safety radios that we're doing life-saving missions on. If you have a scanner, you probably hear this all the time. That's a little bit what that one's saying, but not exactly. Here's a good one. One of the issues with the repeaters not being connected is if you're on one end of the county, you can't even tell if someone on the other end of the county is talking. So you're going to be interrupted and talking over each other without even being aware of it, and basically cutting each other off. And that's what's happening on this. So that's two different people talking at the same time, and they didn't know. They couldn't hear each other.
Because they're on two different towers.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, two different areas of the county. Yeah. That's just a little example for y'all. Just kind of the issue we're dealing with. Imagine trying to have some critical communication you're trying to do, and then that's all you can do to get out right now. So it's not all, sometimes it's clear, but it's not reliable, and it's certainly not public safety grade when we're dealing with this every single day at night.
The next item up we looked at was the infrastructure, so the sites themselves. We did see there's some improvements for grounding. That's a system that helps shunt any lightning strikes or any power surges to the ground that avoids damaging the sensitive radio equipment. Tower maintenance. Some of these towers need to be looked at for structural integrity every year or so. Climate control, so your heating and ventilation and air conditioning systems that help keep the shelters cool where the equipment is housed. And then the site alarming and monitoring. And this is something that gets overlooked pretty frequently, but having good site alarms that show when a generator may fail, when a piece of equipment may fail, or maybe even a minor alarm that can be fixed in a couple days, but it prevents the site from going off the air. It prevents this, you catch it with a small problem before it's a system impacting problem. We found very limited site alarming and monitoring. I think one of the generators kind of has an alarm that goes out over the radio system itself.
Yeah, just the tower has a generator. The other ones we don't know unless the power goes out, basically.
Yes.
Yeah, we have to go up there and see what the problem is.
For interoperability, we saw a few different methods being used today. Radio swaps were pretty common. That's neighboring agencies just swapping radios when they get on site. Some cross-programming. A lot of units have neighboring counties' frequencies programmed in their radios as well. And in some cases, even having to relay communications through dispatch, which is not the most effective, means. You're having a couple steps added to the whole process. We had a quick table here that just shows all the neighboring counties, what frequency band they are on, and how interoperability is achieved today. With Unicoi County in Tennessee, really having none that was reported today. For the subscribers, so the handheld radios or the mobile vehicle mounted radios, we saw a pretty wide range reported in the age and quality of these radios. Most handle just analog communications today. Analog, as you heard in some of the communications, when you have static showing up, that's an analog feature that happens. As you get further away from the tower or radio signal degrades, more and more static, comes in on the signal. And we did see that there's really no oversight allowed of subscribers. So anybody can go out and buy a $40 radio online, look up online on radioreference.com, program up a radio and be listening to the county frequencies. For the life cycle maintenance of all the equipment, we did find a lot of it is beyond end of life. There's been some that's been replaced recently as it failed, and that's kind of in the plan is as the equipment fails, it gets replaced. We did have in our recommendations a way to kind of reuse some of that newer equipment so that that's not, a stranded investment from the past couple of years. So on to our recommendations. We did have a bit of a consultative approach. We, talked with the stakeholders early on in the process and got their feedback on some of the features desired and the big problems that they reported as well. We talked to Caleb as well, went through the draft report and incorporated some of his feedback into the report. So our primary recommendation, we developed the conceptual design for a UHF trunked radio system that would be a P25 radio system as well. So a trunked radio system is, it dynamically uses the frequencies that are assigned to it for subscribers. So I was compare it to a grocery store where if you're in one line and you see another line that's a little bit shorter, you can skip over that line and go through there instead of standing and waiting for 5 people ahead of you. You're not assigned to one static lane, you get some wiggle room. That's how the trunk radio system works. This would also be a simulcast radio system, as mentioned before. That would be all the sites kind of work as a single site. And it does away with that problem we have today with the 3 sites acting independently. And as we heard, 2 users talking over top of each other and not realizing it. As part of this system, we did realize there's some potential for bringing in some non-public safety agencies. So we listed a few: the health department, the schools, animal control, transportation. This conceptual system would allow it to prioritize the traffic, so they can use the system as well, just that the law enforcement, the fire, and the EMS has higher priority. So their communications will always get through. They may bump animal control once in a while when the system gets busy. And then we did also develop a couple other alternative designs. One was a very similar system to what we proposed. It's just a DMR system, not quite public safety grade. It's more of a commercial grade infrastructure. And then we also proposed or looked at joining the statewide Viper radio system. And I'll look through it a little bit, the kind of the pros and cons of both those alternatives. So for our main recommendation, so we have a conceptual design of the network. We looked at some point-to-point connections between all the sites that we proposed, and did see that there's some viable options here. So we have a bit of a ring structure for all the 3 proposed sites. That way, if one path goes down, all 3 sites are still connected. Dispatch, we couldn't find a redundant path to. We have a single microwave path or point-to-point path to the dispatch center. Overall, the system itself, like I said, it's a public safety grade system. It would improve coverage by transitioning from the VHF spectrum, which is very noisy, up to UHF, which is, I think, for this terrain, kind of the sweet spot as far as coverage. We have some low-rate data services that the system could use that could be applied encryption for certain police communications that they don't want anybody to be listening on. And even some location services are possible. The system itself, we propose using 3 RF sites. Keeping cost in mind, we did look at the state-owned sites in the county. So we propose using 2 of the existing Viper sites to help keep the costs down. Because Viper does have a pretty good track record of allowing counties to use their sites at no cost. And then we reused 1 existing site today. And there's some site improvements that were accounted for in the budgetary numbers. We did look at UHF frequencies, and we identified in the report, I don't think I have them on the slide, but a fair number of candidate frequencies that could be licensed for this system. Being a trunked system, it would have 4 dynamic talk paths that would meet the capacity needs of the county. And then, like I said, we have the licensed backhaul system and some site improvements at Rich Mountain that were included. And we also included some budgetary numbers for replacing portables and radios. Or portables and mobile radios, sorry. The other options we did look at, like I said, the DMR UHF system, digital mobile radio. It's not public safety grade, but it is less costly. And then the transition to the Viper system, they operate at 800 megahertz. That would likely mean you're going to have a fairly large upfront cost and actually add sites to the Viper system to try to improve coverage. And it could be a fairly large number of sites. I think we ran some rough conceptual models and hit like a dozen sites, and we're still going. So
It's like a dozen huge towers. It's
and they get
$1 million each, maybe.
about $1 million, yeah, to develop.
To do the Viper, that's why.
So that's why we didn't choose that.
You're saying in order to get adequate coverage with Viper in our geographical region,
Be up to a
we'd have
dozen.
to add 10 or 12 towers.
There's other counties that have done that, and they're in the process of adding those towers, and it works if you can do it, you know, if you have a huge budget, maybe that you can do it with, but,
Or if you're in the eastern part of the state where it's a little flatter, they have a lot easier time with it.
Can we use the COVID money to buy Powerball tickets to up there?
So,
We did develop a budgetary estimate for our recommended solution. A bulleted list right here. I'll go through it real brief of what was included in this. So we had the backhaul system. We had a new communication shelter up at the Rich Mountain site. Some DC power systems at the sites. That's DC power systems help provide power for the equipment itself, and also a fair amount of backup power in case a generator fails at a site. And they're required for microwave systems today, so they would have to go in anyway. Site grounding work at Rich Mountain to bring that up to public safety grade. We said do a structural analysis for all three of these towers to make sure they can support all the proposed loading. A network management system at the three sites, and then there'd be a client computer at dispatch that would allow the site alarming and notifications I talked about. Of course, the P25 radio equipment is going to be needed at the sites. It's kind of a given. We did say there's 4 backup control stations for dispatch, so that would be in case the system does have some kind of a failure. Dispatch can still talk over the air back to the system and continue dispatching as they normally would. There's a CSSI connection, or it's defined in the P25 standard. It's a console subsystem interface. So that would connect the existing dispatch center and the existing dispatch consoles to the new system. And then we had some new subscriber radios. So 300 portables, 100 mobiles, and 200 P25 pagers. And those P25 pagers actually, they work on a P25 system, and they also work on a conventional tone and voice paging system, which is what the county has today. So that would actually allow users to continue to be paged out the existing way. And then as they transition over to P25 paging, it provides a little bit of a smoother curve there, that they don't feel like there's a sudden abrupt change that they have to experience. And they can actually program in, if they're paged out by any neighboring counties, they can program those tones in as well. For the subscribers, we had a quick rundown of what we included in the cost estimate for each subscriber. It's a pretty standard feature set for a P25 radio system. Of note, one item we did include encryption for a few radios each. That would be, it kind of scrambles the signal so that the public can't listen in if they buy a P25 scanner. So that's usually used by a smaller amount of law enforcement. A quick breakdown of the numbers, and then we also included a discount that we normally see if we do a competitive procurement. So it does total just below $5 million for everything included. We have the LMR system broken out, the backhaul network broken out, the facilities and site improvements, and then the subscriber radios themselves. As I mentioned, some of those discounts for a competitive procurement, it is highly recommended that an RFP, or request for proposals, gets developed. That's where you kind of develop functional specifications or requirements for the system. And then you put that procurement document out and let vendors that can provide those systems, bid against each other to win that bid. A pre-proposal conference is always a good idea. Let the vendors come out, You can kind of describe exactly what you're looking for during that conference, and then even do some site visits so they can see the existing conditions. You get back in your proposals, review them. You can always do some interviews with the vendors to get clarifications on their proposals, and then award it to them, to the winning bidder. I kind of had to fill this slide in, but I'll go through it real quick. It's just some of the experience and kind of depth of the bench that MTP has. We kind of do this all the time, so I won't go into too many specifics here, but and then we can open the floor for questions.
Well, first of all, comments. This has been in the works, guys, for over a year. The county's very appreciative of doing a study, which helps us lay out what we need to do and help us look for sources for funding this. Caleb, thank you, and all the input from all the volunteer fire departments and all of the other agencies in the county who have struggled forever with very inadequate emergency communication. So what we have now is a footprint to go forward and see where we can go. And I want to thank all the folks that have been involved in this. It's been an ongoing process. The decisions that we now have to make are, do we commit ourselves to going after how we've developed the funding, how we improve this, because it is clear the current system we have is grossly inadequate. And people who have to deal with it every day. And it is a matter of public health and safety of the first magnitude. If we can't communicate with each other adequately or sufficiently, there are people and people's lives are at risk every day. So this is a case, another unfortunate case of generational neglect. This didn't happen last week or last month. This has been building for years. But now we have the sort of roadmap forward, and we will, I'm just speaking for myself, we initiated this process as a board, and I think we will continue to work through it. And for those who advocate to make sure that this gets done, this is a case where this will be an investment that helps the entire community. That's part of our responsibility of government, is to find those services and find those things that provide a quality of life and an assurance to help us be able to deliver those services to the public. So thank you again. I read through it, looked at an excellent presentation. I want to see what my peers there have any questions or things.
I want to identify a couple of things first of all, and then I have a couple of questions. I want to thank all those that are part of this work team that put this together. And just a point of clarity, mission critical is not mission to health. It's mission critical. You're a private company, you're a consultant,
Yes.
that are engineers, you're specialists in the field of communication that was contracted to come to our county and do an assessment of our needs.
Yes,
So
that's
just a point of clarity on that. You're not a vendor. When you make the recommendations for UHF or VHF or a Viper system, it's not because you're selling it. You're simply just recommending based on your level of expertise what would be best for our county. And I noticed that you had 6 different counties surrounding us. 2 had VHF, 2 had UHF, and 2 had Viper. And I know there's technical reasons for those sometimes. Is it fair to say that the Viper system is, the state system is the most costly system, and it requires the most infrastructure enhancement when it comes to cell tower additions and to cell tower maintenance, routine maintenance, because you build a tower, you got to take care of it. The more towers you got, the more cost. I said, the question in all that is it not also true that in the region we're in, that Viper offers a limited amount of building and structure penetration versus UHF?
Yes. So Viper, yeah, the 800 megahertz itself with your terrain doesn't play very well. 800 megahertz does tend to penetrate buildings a little bit easier at times because it sees through smaller openings, so windows and doorways. but the trees the tree loss is much higher, 800 megahertz, along with the terrain, causing a lot of coverage loss. So, like we said, it kind of, Caleb asked some follow-up questions after the draft report, so I did run some additional cover studies, and I got to about 12 sites, and when you're trying to get like 95% coverage in a county, you hit a point where the non-coverage is so spread out that every site you add gains less and less. So at about 12 sites, I stopped because I was getting like 0.1% additional coverage in the county. For Viper, your initial cost is going to be very high. Madison County is a little unique. There's not a lot of existing cell towers in the county. I've got a few different databases I look in. And so it was a lot of, let's pick a greenfield site, build a complete site from scratch. The maintenance might not be as costly because Viper tends to tell you, if you do the initial cost, we take over the site care. But I think the initial cost itself, and you still have some cost in maintenance, it just made it so cost prohibitive that we really didn't even finish coming up with a number once it is a certain budgetary amount. We did realize it for your county didn't seem like a good fit.
And going with the UHF system, it's a trunk system. We have, sounds like the ability, number one, is a simulcast, which means if I'm on the Big Knob Tower or the Ducky Top Tower, people that are in the opposite end of the county can still copy that radio track. They still hear it.
Correct. Yeah.
And I had to switch channels, did automatically. And I'm not a radio guy, but automatically.
The system itself transmits from all three sites at the same time, and then it listens at all three sites and then compares all that received audio and picks the best from every packet, really, from all three sites. So this map I showed here of this best server, this becomes one solid router. You don't have to deal with those different calls.
And looking at that map, just point of reference, the handheld radios, which are often used by police and fire both, that area that's all white is a coverage issue.
Yes. Yeah, blue is kind of reliable coverage, black is iffy, you might feel it's not there, and then the white area is, you don't have black.
So we've got a first responder out on an emergency medical call or an officer out with a domestic in those white areas. There's a very significant limited likelihood of being able to transmit. With the UHF system, that affords also the ability to add channels. So you use the term public safety grade system. And I take that's public safety grade versus commercial grade, meaning public safety has more encrypted channels, the ability to communicate on a separate channel without Scannerman or anyone else being able to hear it, but also would we be able to add additional channels so if fire's out on a call, they can drop down to a channel and work their call without interfering with radio traffic that may be emergency on another channel, primary channel.
Yes. Yeah, since you now have a trunk system which is dynamically using your frequencies, there's one frequency that's always in use as a control channel. That's what tells radios which frequencies to go listen on for each communication. But the rest get used dynamically, so you can have, now instead of channels, you actually have talk groups on the system, which are virtual groups. So you can have any number of talk groups. You normally don't want to create too many, or else you can tie up your whole system. But yeah, you can have separate talk groups for different agencies, and then they're not talking over top of each other. So
Is it your expert opinion that, because we spent money, the county allocated money to do some patchwork to try to extend the end of life of our equipment, and I think, Caleb, would it be fair to say that that was a good investment to try, but it is not going to fix our problem?
Correct, yeah, but we will, like you said, that equipment that we purchased, we're actually be able to reuse it potentially in this new system, so it's not, wasn't just money kind of thrown away. We'll be able to, the repeater up there, one of the reasons we purchased that particular one is it has a lot of functionality for other systems, so we can actually tie that one into this and have a little cost saving in the future.
yeah, you have a Tate TV 9100 right now. So it's VHF, and our thought is, you go to UHF, you need to still address interoperability. The easiest way is using what they call the national interoperability channels. These are frequencies in every radio that should be programmed into every radio. VHF, UHF, and the 7 to 800 all have them. So you could take, for your neighboring counties that use VHF, you could use that tape repeater, program it up the national interoperability channels. Agencies from those counties that come in can switch over and talk onto that channel at dispatch, and then your new system would actually have the ability to pass that onto a talk group on your system. So now you have field users talking directly, dispatch does that patch. And
No more handing out Viper radios when we've got a multi-agency, critical incident response. They'll be able to make that communication patch.
Yes, yeah. And actually in the Viper too, yeah, your Viper control station can be patched onto a talk group on the system.
I realize we're talking $5 million. Going back to the VH system, because we're gonna have to do something. What was the, just approximate cost of the VH system?
The VH, or you mean the
It was like $3 million.
DMR? I think it was about 3, maybe 3.5.
And what about on the high end with the 800 megahertz?
That, well, we were looking at site development there would have been the big ticket item, is about $1 million per site. So we were looking at, I think there was a handful of existing sites I found that we did use, but it was around $9 to $10 million in site development alone. And then you had to buy the radio equipment and, the network to connect them all. So it got to be very pricey.
And I have one more question. I don't belabor it, but it's a very important matter. There's a lot of questions to be asked. Just for clarity, because I'm not a radio guy, but this work team, Caleb, was put together to have the assessment, to make recommendations to a bunch of people that aren't radio gurus about how we should move forward. And I hear the recommendation, but I'm guessing that the work group is going to take that information from Mission Critical, and the work group's going to re-meet and actually bring a proposal before the board as far as what the group recommends.
That's
because
correct.
we want to make sure we get representation from all those folks. There's a lot here tonight, and there's a reason they're here, because it's an important issue. But is that fair to say that's how that process?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we want a system that the users want, that meets their needs. So we have that radio group that we're meeting with to make sure they're all in agreement. It's not just me or anyone pushing this thing. It's what we all want to do as a group.
How will it be?
We don't have scheduled meetings. We'll probably have one after this. We'll arrange, but we don't have set meetings yet. So we're just kind of going as needed.
And who's on that committee?
It's not necessarily like a set number of people. I'm on it, Lewis Roberts. We have fire department personnel, EMS, law enforcement. It's basically anyone with the stakeholders in the county is welcome to join in. The fire chiefs. Usually when I reach out to the chiefs around and let them spread the information to their people. But it's really all the stakeholders are invited to give their opinions and thoughts on it. So
Whenever you have that next meeting, do it at the evening. A lot of the fire departments is working, so their chiefs and stuff's working, so it'd be better to do it at the evening.
Yeah, we actually did that too as part of the assessment. Their stakeholder meeting in the evening, they all came out. That's where we got a lot of feedback. So,
One final thing, cost. I realize everybody's going to have some buy-in to this. All the different entities that are associated are going to have to buy in with some incurred cost. But there's a lot of agencies and departments that don't have the ability to shell out their part of $5 million. Can you address that just a little bit about maybe the opportunities for some funding to subsidize?
Sure.
And I believe I've even heard that maybe your organization, Mission Critical, might be able to help facilitate some of that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
we have helped in the past procure some grant funding. Yes.
And one thing with this, the way the project started, I want to make sure we're not just saying, good luck buying all these new radios you need, departments. We included the subscriber radios, actual user radios that everyone's going to be using, the portables and the mobiles and the vehicles, in the initial costs, so that it's part of the initial project, so that all those costs are out there. And then when we go next steps with grant opportunities, because there's quite a number of federal and state and private grant opportunities out there that can pay for these things in different ways.
Pagers,
There's
radios.
even a relatively new, I think November 5th, it just kind of got released, the hazard mitigation grant program.
Yes.
So that's potential right there. There's a lot of fire grants out there to help buy subscriber radios.
I'll let Philip Penny's kind of that on that side of it. I'll let him.
Yeah, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, we certainly want to continue being a partner with this project. So there are a lot of different ways we can help you, but one of the ways that we can help you is through helping you find some grant money. We have been successful in a number of grant opportunities from the North Carolina State 911 Board. They have funded projects up to $2 to $3 million for radio projects. Whether or not this meets the spirit for the ARP funding, that the county received some ARP money, whether this fits that criteria for that money. When you talk about bringing in your health department, your public works, you can sort of build a business case where this becomes a health issue, being able to communicate with these outlined non-public safety agencies. So, we would be more than happy to help you build a business case on how we might apply and get some additional ARP funding. And then Caleb just today identified some funding that may be available through the State Emergency Management Office to help support a radio enhancement. I mean, we don't want to come in here and tell you you've got a big problem and it's going to cost you $5 million, and I go back to Raleigh, and he goes back to Pennsylvania. I mean, we want to be a part of the project, and we want to help be a part of your solution. And so we really would like to continue with this project and help you any way we can. Tim talked a little bit about the process when you do the RFP and you bring the vendors in. We also participate in that. And that's one of the worst things that these radio vendors, when they find out that we're part of the team, they know they got to sharpen the pencil, because they're not going to pull anything over on us. We work with all of them, and we do business from coast to coast. And so we do a lot of business with them, and they know that we're going to require them to give us their best price. So there are a lot of ways we can help you. And certainly, I've been talking to Caleb for, about a year now. And we will continue to support the project. And if we could help you identify grant opportunities, even the Dogwood Leverage Fund had some money available at one time. I know we did a project in Polk and Clay County that got some Dogwood Leverage Fund, and I think you're in that district. So whether or not we can build a business case, and talking with with your county management folks, whether we can build a business case to help get some funding for that, I don't know, but our goal would be to help you identify those opportunities where we can find grants, because $5 million is a lot of money, and we understand that. So
Excellent.
we want to be a part of that, part of your process of trying to come up with that money.
But we've not settled on the 5, 3 million and 5.
Yeah, 5 is your worst case scenario, so that's why I was using the 5.
For how long?
Well, that's we would have to get with Caleb and find out exactly how he would want us to support it.
Right, but I'm saying with the way the environment is right now, with the inflation and the scarcity of the chips and stuff that go in a lot of these, I assume the same chips that go in car computers and stuff are the same kind of chips that you guys are using. So, not you guys specifically, but your field. I mean, is 5 million an attainable figure going into the future, or are we going to end up, with do we need to plan for more? Is what I'm saying. I guess it's the long and short of.
Yeah, we did have some, I think, life cycle maintenance costs broken out in the report itself to plan for 10, 15 years of updates for the system. Having some recommended spares, and the system upgrades get a little tricky there. Sometimes if a system ain't broke, just because the latest upgrade came out doesn't necessarily have to have it. And the vendors have to charge a lot for those. So, but yeah, really, through having a good maintenance plan in place, you can help mitigate that and have a planned amount each year that gets rolled into a budget. So it's not some big unknown cost that, like, this doesn't happen again. The whole system has to be kind of replaced
Right.
once.
Well, I think I can speak for the board. We're all in support. Commissioner Gentry made that statement in the beginning. We were in support of moving forward. We understand the necessity, the urgency, and it's those things we're going to have to address. I appreciate, Caleb, your leadership and all the folks that have been part of that team to get us to this place. Appreciate the fact that there was enough wisdom to seek out the experts and let them give us good consultation. So,
I too can't speak for the board, but I can say from day one, I walked on this board, I stood in something that wanted to be fixed. This is not going to die on my watch. this is not going down, it is, at 50 things that somebody can't make a radio call tomorrow and get the help they need. That is ridiculous. It's got to fit. If it takes 3, 4, 5 weeks, I'll figure it out. Whatever it takes.
Go back to the radio cost and stuff. My question is, so, so the radios you're saying is about $475 each, correct? Is that your handhelds?
No, that's actually a feature of the radios. The radios themselves.
So my concern with this is all our departments are volunteer. And Joe's here, law, back there. So take for instance, in 5 years, he needs a radio. They can pay $3,700 for radio.
Yeah.
And that's what we're gonna run into with really all the departments when they go to inflation.
Well, there's a few ways you can address that. The main one is we did use some mid-tier pricing, just for budgetary purposes and for the initial purchase of, number of radios. There are some other options. When the system gets built, you develop your functional requirements, and then the system gets built, you can actually kind of approve a certain number of different tiers of radios that for use on the system. And you have some competition there. Just because vendor A built your radio system, since it is P25, you can have a vendor B, C, or D radio on your system as long as it's a P25 radio. So there's some competition there. You can get a EF Johnson radio. Those tend to be a little bit cheaper than like a Motorola, for instance. That's what I recommend is have a list of approved at different price points. So because I agree with you, expecting every radio you can buy to be $3,700 is
So they're used to
not
pay,
practical.
that's about what a Viper is. They're used to paying $300-400 for a radio. You got 20 or 30 on the roster.
And I will tell you, I won't name the specific vendor, but there's one out there that's known for having more costly radios. That's the pricing we used for that. So it's worst case.
And Caleb, on that committee, if you get the same ones on it together, not just say whoever on the fire department. That way, same ones coming to meetings, and it'll be better educated towards the rest of the departments.
Yeah, that's a good idea. As you get deeper in the process, they get a little more savvy about certain things. So it's
Because they're gonna have to own it, That's the reason why we did this, though, our first people like the chief, we want them to get what they're looking for and get it done now, it's time.
What's the lifespan of those radios?
The portables and mobiles, about 15 years.
Okay.
You might get some battery replacements here and there. But, yeah. That's part of why we push for the public safety grade. It's a little more hard.
Well, of course, we have the constant evolution of all of this stuff at a pretty rapid rate.
Yes.
But again, gentlemen, thank you, Caleb, thank you for taking the lead on this. Appreciate it. And as I think we've all said, it's something that we have a mission for. Forward to continue working with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Safe
time.
travels.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to pass this around. Chief Waldrop was going to speak tonight in public comment section from Marshall Fire
You just want to
Department.
read it?
Yeah, I can. He was unable to go because of a call for service. My name is Nathan Waldrop. I'm the Fire Chief of Marsville Volunteer Fire Department. I'm here to speak briefly on the communication towers and equipment consultation report. For many years, our county has operated a VHF radio system for our fire, EMS, and law enforcement agencies. This system has served our county well, but has become antiquated, inadequate, and is in urgent need of major overhaul. Emergency Operations Director Caleb Dispenza has made excellent progress working with multiple agency radio committee and the consulting firm you will hear from later this evening. Emergency communications in our county is of paramount importance to communities we serve. Our county is growing. In our department alone, our calls have gone up 40.4% over the last 10 years, and we must assure clear, consistent communications for our responders in effectively responding to and mitigating the many department emergencies we encounter daily. This will not be a quick or easy process. The geography of our county makes it difficult for even the best radio systems to be effective in every area. It will take many hours filling grants, gathering demographics and geographic information, and scouring bid documents to bring this project to fruition. I don't believe I'm bold in saying that this will be one of the most important infrastructure projects the county has undertaken in recent years. In conclusion, I would like to ask that this board make every effort to support this extremely important infrastructure project that will not only affect the way our responders are able to do their jobs now, but also in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Thanks, guys.
Up, Ms. Ruth Ledford. George Director.
So I am here to talk to you about Employee Appreciation Day. It's looking like this year we are going to be unable to have the annual holiday meal again. So we would like to request bringing back the Employee Appreciation Day. Employees would be given an additional day off to use between November 10th and January 4th. If they don't use it, they would lose it, and they would have to have prior approval from their supervisors before using it.
Motion to bring it back.
Second.
Discussion.
So last year, the supervisors did a good job to make sure that the level of service was maintained in the offices accordingly. I want to make sure that we encourage that to, or require that to happen again.
It will indeed. It's a good thing. Got a motion, second discussion. All in favor? Thank you, ma'am. Next up, Ms. Carrie Ledford. Gary.
Okay, so before you, for your approval, please find item A, which is budget amendment number 5. This amendment records additional funds received by the health department through 3 new grants totaling $398,834. I've attached the specifics of each of those grants in your packet for your reference. Please find the allocation from the contingency to the sheriff's department for the new hot water system at the detention facility. For your approval is the transfer of $11,000 from the Register of Deeds Automation Fund to the general fund for the annual licensing of the software used in her department. You will also see the recording of an additional revenue from the recent film project in the amount of $10,000. Also, see the recording of additional revenue generated by the quarter-cent sales tax in the amount of $48,479.01. These funds will be distributed to the Board of Education pending your approval of this amendment.
So in the grand total, if I read this correctly, pulling 22.7 out of, correct?
That's correct.
Make that motion.
Nope.
I have a question. Wow. In regard to the building maintenance for the water system, the sheriff's office, hot water heaters went out, the ones that were there previously struck by lightning. Was there any inquiry as to any possible insurance money from the ones that, and Commissioner, did you not be able to answer that?
The records were checked at the time in which it occurred. No insurance claim was filed.
That's a huge, and just to point another reiteration, we'll talk about budgets this coming year is looking at it's these buildings' age. I think we'll find that out with the bypass building, also with the health department and with the sheriff's office building, that we're going to have to start addressing more seriously of the annual capital outlay and
that will be part of our very next work session meeting. And the year, and thank you for providing some valuable backup data, including some photographs and other information that you had kept. And as we know, that was several years ago when that lightning struck. And if some preventive maintenance had taken at the time, it probably might have extended the life of the two that recently died. Yeah.
How many years ago? 2014 or what it was?
Yeah, these are photographs mapped to the high efficiency units. At least the ones we've got now are high efficiency and will save us some money on
The ones that got struck with lightning went offline, so they used, the building had double the capacity because the product was cut in half. So
Right.
they just used the other ones. So
Yeah,
they
it's
replaced
effectively
these.
shortened the life of the.
Right, and I understand, but we missed a great opportunity to have that compensated, and
$48,000.
that's a big mistake in the long haul.
Yes, it was.
So who's, just out of curiosity, whose responsibility is that to check for that?
That would fall under county management. Yes, sir.
We're talking 14 and 15, right?
Yes, sir.
Amen. Either way, it's got to be fixed now.
Right.
They got to have.
It's got to be fixed now, but I mean, this is something
I
that
hear you.
it needs to be learned from. The people, we need to realize all of our departments, whether it be the finance department, whether it be the county commissioners, whether it be any department, regardless of how high or how low or how big or how small the department is, needs to be sensitive that this is $48,000 of taxpayer money that is wasted because nobody picked up the phone and called the insurance company.
I was three, and as Norris said, and I agree 100% with you, Mr. Wexler. Also, we really have no preventive maintenance program in this county whatsoever. Things go on, they limp on, they do the very best they can, and when something falls apart and it blows up, we wind up paying for it. So hopefully what we'll do, as we go forward with this comprehensive plan, we will come up with a plan to do that. I echo your terms and say, you're exactly right. And we've got to do something. It's ridiculous to let this go. We have stuff growing in some of our gutters to this day.
I'm sorry to get you sidetracked there. Jerry.
No,
Appreciate
but
all your information.
also, it is in my section, but we have already, Marla and I have worked on, and we are setting up a structure to where any and all claims are followed through on. And just to give you an example, recently we've had a couple of vehicle issues. Craig, you brought one up some time ago where we needed to collect across agency to get a vehicle that had not been repaired in a body shop for a long time, that we did get repaired. It's one of our regular user vehicles. And again, it's sort of whether it's a $1,500 car repair, if somebody hit a car, or $48,000 life insurance. There has to be a process in place, or sometimes it just doesn't get followed up.
I make a motion, we make this meeting.
I'll second.
Discussion.
I just have one more, I'm sorry. The health department grants, are those standard grants you get every year, we're able to acquire something above beyond normal?
I believe they're above and beyond, I can pull it out and see, I think.
$1,000 or more.
Right.
More significant, work of the health department, bring that to fruition.
They, the one I just pulled, the first one was the $39,900 one, and it's COVID-related health, COVID issues. The second one, let me look quickly, is also for COVID-19 screening and testing. And the third one is also, COVID screening, testing, vaccine administrative, and with the school, with coordination with the school system.
That goes into the nursing program, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Thank you, Jim Wright.
Thank you.
Item B, you will find October's financial reports. At the top of the first page, you'll see that we're at 33.32% into our FY22 budget. And on the second page, you'll see that for all funds, we have received 31.69% of our revenues, and our expenses are at 24.57%.
We're right on track.
Yes, sir.
Well, good, the budget is good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thanks, Gary.
Next up,
Item 9, gentlemen, as from email earlier today, has been moved to our December meeting with the one exception that we have one refund in that group, approximately $102. All the rest were releases.
Right.
And I would move that we do agree and permit one refund that was recommended for slightly over $100. All of the releases will be reviewed in detail at our December meeting.
With that being said,
Motion to approve that.
Second.
second. Discussion. All in favor? Is those releases are to do with the trash?
Mostly, yes.
I suggest we do away with the card. I know we worked a lot this year. It is a headache. It's a headache for tax collectors. It's one up, and we all voted on it, but we all voted, we all voted on it. We all own this. But when it comes to commercial rates, they're high. I think it'd just be better to do a put it back into general fund, and let that be done. We can discuss that at our next meeting, but.
We gotta do something different, that's for sure. I know
Your nonprofits, your elderly exempt, I mean, we're spending, what, $125,000 of taxpayers' money on that. And if it wasn't in a, whatever you call it, then we could absorb that with the taxes.
Enterprise system.
Enterprise, yeah. So that's just my, and just, you know, this is a rough figure. Somebody's got a $230,000 house. Their taxes on that would be about $180. So if you got less than that, then your taxes would be less than $180 for the trash card.
Well, just a point of argument for that. Number one, whatever we do, I'm an advocate for getting all the information. You and I had a conversation today, and that's my pitch is, we just got through doing this reassessment of fees. We just got through doing it 2 months ago, and then last month, we just got through as this board of approving to look at a subsidy program that you and I are tasked with, and I've already solicited someone from the community to sit on that work group. And then this month, we're gonna just do away with all of it. We have got, as a board, to do the research, to get the numbers, to find out how this is gonna impact businesses, how it's gonna impact people, rich people, poor people, how it's gonna impact the solid waste system as far as how it functions, and how we're going to allocate funding to ensure that when solid waste needs a $300,000 piece of equipment, that there's funds there to do it, not just that they have to come and peddle the commissioners in 5 years. And also, we have to take into consideration the implications it has on the tax office. Does it lighten their load? Does it help their load? And the
That's the
implication.
biggest headache there,
Yeah.
is this trash card.
But when you've got an implication of moving away from one system and going to a different system, it has huge impacts. And I'll give you a good example. It's for a lady who is, and I'm not advocating for either. I don't think we as a board have done a good job of getting all the information before we start making the decision. And if you've got an elderly person who, in the old days, they would use their tobacco check money to pay their taxes. Now, they had a $100,000 piece of real estate. They've got a house here, and they pay their $180 for their fee. And then they got a $100,000 piece of real estate. It's family farm. And right now they're being taxed at 50 cents on a dollar. If we go to just a straight tax system and do away with the enterprise system, they're going to pay $575 on that piece of property that they weren't paying. We're talking about somebody that's on now.
How do you get that number?
Because if you've got a $100,000 piece of property and you're going to 57 cents instead of 50, then that's how much your taxes are going to be. 57.5%. That's how much our taxes will have
So
to go
what would
up.
it be at 50?
Well, you figure 7.5%. I'm just using a figure that their taxes are going to go up. So It's easy
But
to
they're
say
not paying $180 for trash card.
they're not paying it anyway on that $100,000
It's vacant land.
It's undeveloped land.
Yeah, they
So
keep
anybody,
money
my
if-
point is, anybody that has land that's undeveloped is going to, their taxes are going up, whether you're rich or poor. So it's just things like that that we have to look at the totality of how we make the decision about how that we're gonna spread that out. There's a lot of problems, no matter what you do, and I shared that with you today as well. I talked to 15 counties, and all 15 of them will tell you the same thing. There's problems with collecting trash and how you do the fees, no matter what you do. There's not a perfect way, and my suggestion to this board is, we need to look at it. We need to look at it objectively and get all the information before we make a decision.
Oh, I agree. I'm not here to make it, we couldn't do that until July 2022. It's already done. I'm just saying, I think it'd be a whole lot better, less headache on tax people, that's for sure.
Well, there's definitely pros to it.
There's
cons and there's
cons.
pros. I'm not advocating for it or against it. I think
When
there's-
this last past year looking at this, we tried to find an answer for pretty much everything. Every business, tires, household, everything. There's no good answer for everything.
That's a fact.
And there never will be.
And you're right.
So if we're gonna keep chasing a rainbow, you're never gonna accomplish your end game. You can't, because it can't be accomplished. So what we've got to do is, we have to, we can't take this schizophrenic approach to trying to solve every problem every time. And we need to respond to the taxpayers when they make a phone call to us or an email to us. And we need to be responsive to them, but we can't go off half-cocked every time somebody has a complaint about the way we've decided to do something.
So who's half-cocked?
Well, we just made a proposal. I mean, was there not just a proposal that we throw out the trash card system?
Yeah, sure is.
Well, that's half-cocked in my opinion.
No, it's not. Like it or not, I think we were wrong in this trash card the way we just did it. And everyone voted on it. That's not half-cocked.
How is it?
How is it? Look, after going back and looking at, you were talking about 7 cents or 8 cents, then finding out that it's not, everybody's taxes are not going to raise, because when you take into consideration that $180 off of that, you got to have over a $225,000 house for it to be more than 180.
It's 211,000. I presented this to the board some time ago when we were talking about this, and my suggestion then, the same one it was, the same one it is now, that those making less than 211,000, we had people in the audience actually presented the same data, that those making less than 200, or valued at less than 211,000 would see a reduction based on the fact that we're paying 180. Those that were more would pay more. The more your property's worth, your property's worth 400,000, you would see, a pretty significant increase in it. I think it was 200, to be exact, $246 more that they would pay on a $500,000 piece of property. So yeah, I don't have a problem with us looking at it. I think we can move on from this at this point. Just simply say we should be looking at it, because especially before we make any more decisions, is to move forward, is to get the information before we make a decision and try to. Once we get it, then we'll make a collective decision. There'll be 3 to 5 of us that vote in favor, and then we'll all own it, whatever it is, and we won't be adjusting it every 3 months to a different policy or a different ordinance variation.
Well, I just think it'd be easier, especially for the nonprofit. When you go talk about the nonprofit, the churches, and then the elderly, then the taxpayers, it's going to come out of general fund, correct? So you're looking at $150,000 to $200,000 that the taxpayers will have to pay because, the elderly subsidies, the
Subsidy.
yes, yes. So your fire department, your churches, your nonprofits, my sister's place, so stuff like that. Then we're not having to turn around and put this back. Pay for this.
Well, before we make a decision, I would encourage us to, number one, let's elicit the feedback and the input of the tax collector's office, the solid waste department, and also some key folks in the communities that have businesses or that have property, solicit their information, and that way we can make an informed decision, and let's make it move on.
And I think the point that Commissioner Garrison was trying to make, and I don't know if it made it all the way across, but you've got, if you're saying that somebody's elderly and you're giving them a break, you're not giving them a break if you increase their tax rate. If they own a big, say that they might be elderly and they may be low income, but they may also have the large family farm that they're trying to keep intact. Those people, just because they're low income, they're not going to get a break now.
Right.
They're going to pay more. So the same people you're trying to help, you're actually hurting when you increase the tax rate. In some instances, I'm not saying it's going to be every single person, but the point is you got to take that all into consideration.
They're property rich, pocket poor.
Exactly.
Well, I know, like I said, there's no, it's not black on it, there's gray.
And we won't come in.
And the thing about it, how many people you know in Madison County, $225,000, $250,000 homes?
Well, one of the things,
Somebody's going to have to pay for it. It ain't going to be free just because you change the tax rate.
in the interest of that, I reached out to the tax office today and I asked our tax collector if it was possible, before we start making decisions on this, to give us a breakdown. How many properties are valued at 100,000? How many properties are valued at 200? How many valued at 300? How many 400? That way we know that is really impacting this. Is the fee increase to go to 57.5 cent tax rate? Is it how many people is that really going to cost money? And those are things that help us make decisions. Is it really 25% or is it 75%? Make those decisions. So, and she thinks that may be possible. She's going to reach out to the vendor and see.
She's going to ask Sarah.
And that's stuff that we need to make that decision. Didn't we know? But it's worth looking at.
Moving on to the
All right, gentlemen. I have a few items in mind, and then we got some in the city stuff. First off, I want to do a couple of shout outs. Mandy and Kathy have now managed to dispose of over 30 of our, shall we say, unusable vehicles for the county. We just killed off another 5. I think 4 of them belong to the sheriff's office. And so we're removing our own county junkyard. But thank you, Mandy, and make sure that I put some of Kathy to work. And while we're talking about things, those are little things, but they're not little things. They actually put quite a bit of chunk of change in the bank. Also, Brittany, our child support, one and only, got another state performance award the other day for a job very well done. And so a shout out to Brittany. Update on Golden Leaf. In this house tomorrow will be Ted Lord, the chief of Golden Leaf. He will be paying Ag Extension an in-person visit tomorrow to look at their value-adding kitchen. We have not heard anything very specific. The school system also they have been contacted in a tentative sense. I reached out to our folks at Spring Creek. They have yet to hear nothing official. Now, I'm not saying that the visit by Chief of Golden Leaf means anything other than he likes the mountains this time of the year. But I think that's moving along, and I think we will hopefully have some very good news in the very good future on Golden Leaf.
yes.
Now, Matt, if you would bring us up to speed, please, on latest information on Ivy River.
All right, we talked a meeting or two ago about Weaverville's intent to continue to tap and increase their tap of the Ivy River for their use of drinking water, and then so graciously return that water via the French Broad is in the form of treated sewage. So anyway, we've got I've done some preliminary work on this, and we're still working on it. Mandy is searching the county minutes to go back to the area when all this was originally done and negotiated, which would be 92, 93, 94, somewhere mostly in the 93 range. County Attorney Laws gave me some good advice, and we've done some additional asking of the folks in Raleigh, particular DEQ. So we, Representative Pless, working through Representative Pless's office, has made an ask for documentation from that same time frame as to when the negotiations were done. We actually asked for any historical documents and or data that come along in that time range and have anything to do with Weaverville's tap of the Ivy River. I had the opportunity to sit in a meeting, the Ivy River Partners semi-annual stakeholders meeting, and there happened to be a representative from Weaverville there. So since it was my first meeting, I tried to stay on good behavior, and we tried to probe and get a little bit of information. Weaverville, and I'm not saying any of this is the gospel truth, I'm just reciting what Weaverville claimed. Weaverville is claiming that the water levels in the Ivy River are the highest that they've been in years. But they didn't provide any data to back that up, just made a random statement about that. But Weaverville and our inflationary economy may be our ally in this particular case. I think Weaverville originally thought when they were going to undertake this project that it was going to come home somewhere in the $8 million range. Their most recent cost estimate is $13.6 million. So that was pretty big sticker shock for them. So odds are they're not going to even, from what I'm hearing, they're probably not going to put the plan up for additional discussion for town council in Weaverville until after the first of the year. And of course, they just had an election there too, so that could be part of that reason as well. But the representative from Weaverville, even though they only pull out 1.5 million gallons a day currently is their maximum amount they're allowed to pull out, they claim they pull 800,000 to 900,000 gallons a day. But they're permitted to do 1.5 million. They claim that they were approved to pull up to 4 million gallons a day in that agreement from 1993, as long as they could prove that they had the capacity to treat that amount of water, which they don't currently. That's why they want to expand their system. So let's see. Their end game right now is to get their plant capacity up to 3 million gallons per day, even though by their internal projections, they're not going to need that much volume or capacity for approximately 50 years.
Do they have documentation of where they said they could do 3 or 4 million?
That's what we're seeking from Raleigh. Okay, I'm sure they have it, but they're not sharing it,
Right.
or at least they haven't yet. They currently have approximately 3,000 taps. That's 3,000 households that they serve. But their goal is to reach 20,000 taps. Now, Weaverville's not been shy. They basically stated they have every intent of building straight out to the Madison County line. Let's see. But Weaverville did make the statement that, because one of the things I brought up in that meeting was that, well, what happens if Weaverville's sucking all this water out of the Ivy River, but Marshall determines at some point in time they're going to need water out of the Ivy River because, obviously Marshall has had water issues for a while now. And I think the reason that Marshall doesn't take water out of the Ivy River is because they would have to devise a treatment plant themselves. And I believe that obviously the cost figure of that is probably prohibitive to the town of Marshall, but Weaverville was so gracious that they would be willing to sell 200,000 gallons of our own water back to us after it's been treated 200,000 gallons per day to Marcel, 125,000 gallons per day to Marshall if they needed it.
Just put a pipe above.
Yeah. And so I wouldn't have a problem. I wouldn't have a problem with that. The question is whether DEQ would allow. So in the town, interestingly enough, and this is something I did realize, is that the town pumps the water out of the Ivy River into their holding tanks daily from midnight to 4 p.m. Now some of the folks that have complained to me have indicated that various times during the day they can tell the difference in the river flow, and we just always assumed that was when their pumps were on. But they claim that that their pumps stay on from midnight to 4 p.m. except for Wednesdays and Sundays. They don't pull any water out on Wednesdays or Sundays. Let's see. The statement was made that 30 to 40 million gallons of water flow through the Ivy daily, and that the water that they propose pulling out will only lower the water level less than an inch in the Ivy River. But again, that was just a statement. No actual data was actually provided to back up that claim. So that's where we are in the particulars there. It's interesting that I reached out to the gentleman who operates the hydroelectric dam on the Ivy River, and if he doesn't, and I inadvertently left those notes at home, but if he doesn't maintain a certain amount of flow in the river, he gets in trouble with the feds, not the state. But yet the state is the one that's permitting Weaverville to pull water out. And so if they pull that much water out and say it's a drought and there's not enough water for the hydroelectric dam to meet their federal requirement, they literally have to shut down. They can't generate power. They can't run their equipment. So, there's more. I think the key going forward, if anyone will listen to us, is to try to impose on Raleigh and on Weaverville that they're not the only, for lack of a better term, the only fish in the pond here. That Madison County needs to be given some consideration in the equation. Now, I don't know if that's going to be doable or not, because as of right now, we don't know what our county commissioners signed off on back in 1992, 93, 94. What kind of agreements they made are unknown to us at this point in time. So we've got to get that historical data and do that research to find out. But that's what we know right now. Representative Pless's office has been incredibly helpful, as has Donnie with some good advice. And thank you to Mandy for doing her research. I know going through those old minutes is dry work. We appreciate her doing that. And so hopefully I'll have a better update in the near future, but that's where we stand right now.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. We are still doing homework on the issues at the jail. We'll actually do a little bit more discussion of that. Our November the 23rd work session will be at the Marshall Library. It will be primarily on maintenance and the health department's opioid presentation. And our council will be up right after me with some information on the opioid settlement. The movie production has completed. The final cleaning of the island, replanting of the ball field. They are keeping some stuff here. They are leasing from not the county, but from independent folks, several thousand square feet of storage space as a contingency to return. 75% of this first series was filmed in London. The rest of it was filmed here. They're very happy they were here. We had some interruptions and all those things. They paid their bills right on time. They were good to work with. Few hiccups, but they were good to work with. They won't know until late winter if they're coming back to do a second season here. Probably about the same amount of time and effort will be involved. But it was a good project for all. The town and county made a little bit of money out of it. And again, I think we're going to get some high profile police visibility when this stuff comes out. So when it does, we get any lead on that, if we get any preview stuff or any stuff, I'll pass it down the tubes to everybody. But, they were pleased enough that, they are seriously looking at coming back for this production. And without speaking out of the box, the total producers, who includes, one of the directors is an Academy Award-winning director. They also quite actively said that they thought there were possibilities for other types of productions, not just urban or old town productions, but they love the real estate. They love Fort Madison County, so who knows? It may have some other economic legs. Let's talk for just a second before we move on to about the time for our November the 23rd. Matt, what works for you on the 23rd? And we will be at the library for the work session.
It's initially at 5, correct?
It's standard at 5 if we don't change it.
I think Matt's on the one.
Sure, blame it on the working man, that's all I can say.
Well,
Somebody's got to pay
that.
that, somebody's got to pay that 15% tax increase you just proposed a minute ago.
I say, I work 80 hours a week, so.
7.5?
Y'all growing over there like a fish in a pond.
Yeah.
Um,
It shouldn't have all of them.
so
All the
anyway,
land.
let's see, I mean, I'm, it's 5, what's on the table, 5?
Well, 5 standard.
Okay.
But
I
could we
think
move it
North
earlier?
wanted to move it a little earlier, but I told him you'd probably be the one.
Yeah.
Let's be hard. What's the
The
earliest?
hardest part about that is it's already a short work week because of the
Oh, it
holiday.
is.
but,
It is.
How much time do you anticipate the meeting taking?
Well, you and I, we're at the opioid.
6 hours.
We're looking at a solid hour and a half, I think, for that, probably realistically. The maintenance is probably going to take another good hour. We know we've got a couple of other things that, so I'm thinking 3 to 4 hours is completely realistic. And that's on a very short agenda.
Yeah, how about we put some time limits on the opioid presentation?
So on that board, I'll be more happy to.
I think that can be narrowed down.
Oh,
That can be consolidated.
But you and I have sent through.
Yeah, we've already sat through it once. I don't necessarily, I've actually sat through it twice now already.
But I bet it was just as long as second time.
Yeah, so,
I'm for setting the time limit too.
yeah, I'd say
We don't need to meet.
on the opioid meeting, on the opioid, presentation, let's limit them to an hour.
I'm good.
30 minutes.
No, they actually need to be.
Yeah, I don't know that they can do it in 30 minutes, that if they put it into ultra fast forward, I don't know they can do it in 30 minutes. And there's a lot of material to cover there.
Yeah, and we are dealing with a $1.6+ billion deal.
But I don't think it's unreasonable to limit them to an hour.
I think the power's good.
Yeah. So
If we can do an hour for me.
you want to do 4 o'clock then?
If everybody else is doing it.
I can do 4 if it works with everybody else.
Okay, so that will be 4 o'clock. All right?
Is that firm?
How about your busy schedule, Michael, retirement?
I'm honest. I'm there.
All right. Now, we have one other update, and this is an ongoing project from the last few days. And this has to do with the ongoing Gibbons discussions. And again, Donnie, you feel free to chime in here. I'm going to pass each of you from our GIS system the property that, as of yesterday afternoon, late, we got confirmation from the Gibbons folks that they would like to proceed with doing due diligence on this property to see if it works for them. It is 20.79 acres approximately. We have a couple of lines we could wiggle. It is what's in blue. Jeff Hyder got this worked up for me. And by the way, he also is watching tonight, and he just texted and said, the question about the segregation of property, he can do that. Wow. Yeah. So he's watching, and he actually texted, yeah, Jeff, I told him, okay. Now, the reason that they want that finger of land that some people might think is probably not of any value, they have an issue with the distance from the jail complex. It's part of the requirements, nothing against the jail, nothing against those things. But in order to possibly extend their entrance at quite some expense and get that entrance closer to 213, also get that traffic out of everything else that's up there, they're thinking about building a literally an independent driveway through that. The most of the property would be obviously that basin, which sits immediately north, almost dead north, of the current Hot Springs Health Program. The line that you see that is drawn out of that back corner there actually could move over more north and go straight instead of dip over. So the hill behind the health department is not in any way other than if you look straight behind the Hot Springs Health Program. And Donnie has spoken with their attorneys in Raleigh. And Donnie, what of this we could discuss in open, or what we might need to discuss?
We can discuss this.
Okay. So if you would fill us in on, in order to meet this year's cycle, what we would need to do, or if we go into the next year's funding cycle, which would be obviously 23, 24. So fill us in your discussions with our attorneys.
Thank you. So Norris contacted me last Thursday, I believe, and asked that I reach out to Gibbons Estate attorneys who they have used a law firm out of Raleigh. The lead attorney down there is actually from the mountains, and both of her parents attended Mars Hill, is what she told me when I spoke to her. She has been the attorney who has assisted Gibbons in the projects that the Gibbons representative told us about in Black Mountain, and I believe the ones in Haywood County. And how they work is that they work in a funded cycle. You know, Gibbons is a very complicated nonprofit association that develops a lot of housing in Western North Carolina. So they try to develop their projects, i.e. this year, and then they make an application for their funding cycle in January. So the lady that I spoke with, Susan Ellinger, I just said, what is it that you need from Madison County in order to get this in your funding cycle for next year? And basically she said, we need a commitment from Madison County that Madison County will work with us and convey to us through an MOU, or at least tie that up, a tract of land that we can develop. So, you know, you've done, and I talked with her at some length about how we would need to work with Gibbons Estates and what the procedure and what it is that they want from us. So, you know, we've dealt with a lot of disposition of real property. And basically what we've done is, you know, county governments cannot just go out and sell to anybody. We have to go through certain procedures in order to convey property. And generally what we do is that we will do a private negotiation and then offer the property through the upset bid process so that we get a fair market value for it. But you also know that we have available to us in economic development the ability to convey property to potential developers at a reduced rate other than fair market value, as long as they will essentially pay for that through investments that they're going to make in Madison County. Well, Gibbons operates through a third means of allowing counties to convey property, and that is through what is called affordable housing. And if there is a nonprofit, which Gibbons is, who will commit to developing affordable housing, elderly, low to middle income housing, then on a piece of property that we'll be willing to convey to them, we can convey that property to them through a private process, wherein it can be less than fair market value.
We can only do that if they will put conditions on that conveyance wherein they guarantee to develop property, a certain number of units, provide them to elderly, low or moderate income recipients over a period of time. So what Norris has gone over a piece of property that they are interested in. If you are interested in working out something with the Gibbons Estates so that we could convey that tract of land to them in consideration for them telling us how they want to develop it, and would it be low, moderate, elderly type housing? Will it be a high-rise unit? Will it be freestanding units? How they will market that to folks in Madison County. There has to be a need for that. I think we all realize that there is that need in Madison County. So this is sort of thing where it's a type of public-private partnership. We've got the land that they want. They're willing to come here, build the housing, offer it to our folks at a reduced rate, but we work with them in giving them the land. So what I would ask you to do, if this is a tract of land that you are interested in making available to them, we will put that out to them. We will ask them, what is it that you plan to do with this parcel of land? What kind of structure, over what period of time, how many units? And if it's something that we can come together on, we can enter into an MOU that we will further flesh that out. They need that MOU by January, which means you need to be able to consider entering into that MOU probably at your January or at your December regular meeting, or at least at your December regular work session if you're going to have one. So if you want Norris and I to move forward and develop such an MOU, if you will give us that go-ahead that you're interested in this project, then we will we'll have something available.
I'll second that motion. Discussion.
Just a couple things. I actually spoke with our HUD representative here in Madison County that does the allocation of HUD funding and goes through the application process. And there's definitely, gave us the data, and she substantiated that as a realistic reality that we are way short on the availability of housing for the elderly. Bottom line is we need what Gibbons is offering, as long as it's going to be consistent. It's going to be consistent with the type of housing they've done in other places, which is for elderly. So I'm definitely all for moving forward. Two things just as a note: I'm always careful about allocating county property in an area where the county is developing and growing, and that's kind of our site there. So I think when we talk about our capital outlay and improvement, Mr. Gentry's given us some other alternatives as far as we're going to expand and grow as government service buildings. And I think as long as we keep those in contingency, I wouldn't be as apt to oppose this particular piece of property. Otherwise, I would.
So was there another piece of property that they looked at on?
Well, I think what I was referring to, so long as we don't encumber the primary piece of property behind the health department.
I'll give you an example. If the health department needs to grow, if we move the courthouse at some point, you know, those, if they're not going here, then I don't have a problem doing something else with this. But our administrative offices, the office for DSS, even the health department, the building they're in, and the courthouse, we've got to think long-term strategic. And this is some of our land. If we're even considering going towards this location, then I'm apprehensive about letting this property go. If we're not considering this location, we're looking at expansion. Otherwise, as Commissioner Gentry shared in previous visionary discussions, then I don't have a problem with it. The second thing is, Gibbons is a nonprofit. So when we talk about the investment, I've had the same question about the Thomas Branch property. When we have this level of investment, and it's really just a service to the community because it's being this nonprofit, that means that the property, no matter how much money they spend on this hill, is tax exempt. So we're not getting anything from that investment.
Well,
Other than the marshal's gonna have to sell them water and sewer.
What are they gonna do with their trash carts?
and
You're gonna pay for them, Matt.
and approximately 100 to 110 employees.
Right, right.
And the way
That's
that
very
the,
good.
the way the level of operation, I mean, most of us have visited the Gibbons, we know somebody who's there for Billy, and if you're talking about a class act, folks, this is a class act, and they have a track record. And the average number of employees per resident runs about 1.1 to 1.2. It takes a lot of people to run these places. Now, again, that's long-term employment, not necessarily the highest end wage. One of the things they love about the site, they have a medical facility on the site. So the Hot Springs Health Program is virtually in their door. The Hot Springs Health Program, I have spoken with Teresa when this very first came up, and she checked with her board. They are fine with it being next door, because I said, do you think you're gonna need any more land? Do you wanna make sure that before all this gets developed around you? And the Hot Springs Health Program needs 2 or 3 or 5 acres, okay? And that symbiotic relationship actually could help both of those businesses, which in effect helps Madison County. It helps the Hot Springs Health Program retain its viability as our sole primary care facility.
So are they gonna need that entire block?
They would prefer, because trying to develop anything else in that whole, and I would encourage every commissioner who's not been over there and looked at it or walked on it to literally go over to Hot Springs Health Program, park your car, take a walk. And you can take a look at the hole we're talking about in there.
Well, I want to reiterate, I'm all for this. I'm an advocate for this, for housing our elderly especially. Just knowing, though, that we're not talking about a financial investment when it comes to property, and that we are potentially going to let this real estate maybe go up at a reduced rate to help facilitate. So,
How developable is this land, Norris? Because, I mean, obviously, my motivation is this general vicinity is a prime area, well, because we've got to replace the courthouse at some point in time, sooner rather than later. We can't keep ignoring that. I'm not accusing anybody that we are. I'm just saying we can't keep ignoring that.
But it's
yes. Is this land up here developable enough for a courthouse complex?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where they would locate, this is just general.
I'm talking about this property behind the health department.
That hill? Yes.
That we still would maintain
Oh, absolutely.
ownership of.
Absolutely.
This property is not as desirable
That
for.
property is not as desirable. It would need to be for small use, where you would probably end up only developing 5, 7 acres of it. The rest would be protection of the property, and possibly an additional of another 3 or 4 floor building. Their general plan is to build a multi-floor building that would have a fairly small footprint, actually. But yes, the only obstacle we could have, and we know that rock is all over this place here, guys. Go one hill, it's dirt, the next hill over, it's solid granite. That hill behind the health department has never been core drilled. Now, there all that other construction, including the jail, they hit very little rock when they built the jail. And you might go 50 yards that way and run into solid granite 2 feet under. But we own that all the way over the ridge, back where the old landfill is. And your loop road could come from over on Long Branch, up by where transportation is, past the old landfill, and loop over to where the jail is, right across the hill, and access up to the top of the hill, give you dual access and stuff. But yes, definitely that mountain behind the Hot Springs Health Program and the health department is very gradable. We've got land across the valley where we could transport dirt, even back over to where the old landfill is if we need it. But again, we spent a lot of time, we even spent time looking at some private properties, right, they did as well. And they've got to have certain criteria, they can only be sold for from supermarkets, they have to be other things. If it's in Marshall, it needs to be within reach of existing water and sewer capacity. There is very good capacity in that basin with the water and sewer were extended to the jail. It was extended for the double capacity of what the jail, you were there at the time. So that's probably the best surplus capacity the town of Marshall has anywhere in the town of Marshall. Is that water and sewer capacity that currently comes to the jail. So it would be practical for the town of Marshall to be able to provide, which they very, quite frankly, would be very limited to be able to do in other places. So there's actually a lot of homework thought go into that location.
One last point is that intersection is a mess.
We gotta have a traffic light there, and we gotta rebuild that.
Well,
yeah, it's the best ways to do it is put that.
Well, and
terribly designed.
I'll tell you, I mean, one of the things that Forrest and I had approached, we had approached the DOT about reworking that intersection. Of course, with the DOT's current funding issues, I don't know that we're going to be able to present a new project to them at this point.
That might actually improve next week.
But this intersection it is actually, at one time was being considered to do a roundabout there.
Yes.
And that was one of the things that Forrest and I were trying to talk to them about.
Well, as you well know, I own the property right there. I was also involved in that.
Yeah.
And the state didn't even want to put a traffic light up.
Right.
And redirect the driveway, my driveway, put it up toward the fire hydrant,
Right.
make it safer, remove the truck parking stuff. And we all got stonewalled. And I'm not going to repeat some of the comments, which were pretty bad. But I got from the state because I virtually told them, I said, anything you want to do, I completely cooperate with you.
Right.
But that whole intersection, without any additional development, seems to me it's very unsafe.
Well, and I think adding those residential units up there would make it, hopefully make it more attractive to
Well, I think we could help
NCDOT.
force the issue. Yeah. And they would be the sort of a tenant that would have some leverage to help us.
Right.
Well, I've spoke concerning just things we need to be aware of. We got a motion second. I think we move forward with it.
Well, and just to be clear, this doesn't increase our tax base at all. It creates jobs, but it doesn't
And
create our
service,
taxes.
it creates service to the.
Exactly.
To our elderly.
Exactly.
They might also buy our food here and see our doctors and our nurses and our
It's
dentists.
a good location.
Cars
Proximity to
might
a
need to
grocery
work
store
on.
to health service.
Well, and it may encourage some additional development, some additional commercial development in that area, or at least close by, that would benefit all of our residents. And it's definitely worthy of additional consideration. But I don't want to compromise the possibility of us putting a courthouse complex up that way somewhere in the future.
Okay.
All in favor?
And what I'll give you, this is for your length of not reading, this is a process that we have to go through in order to be able to raise the length. If I'm going to do some rate, it's just a process we go through with additions in the deed of conveyance to them. It's very enlightening about how the process works. I mean, if Gibbons is a nonprofit, you can actually allocate tax dollars to them as long as they use the money for a public purpose. And you provided housing to your elderly in Madison County at a reduced rate is certainly a public purpose.
And there has to be a contract that
Yes.
verify that,
And if they don't meet those conditions, then essentially we get the property back.
So you're saying in this exchange that there will be a reduced cost for Madison County residents?
Oh, yes. Yeah, they have to subsidize the program. Yes.
It's basically Section 8 housing program.
Now, one other subject before we leave that neighborhood. And Michael, help me with this conversation. This is not a new conversation, but the location is sort of not new. There's been an off and on conversation for years about developing a veterans park in Madison County. So in the last few days, Michael and I have been talking and other folks around, and the possibility of using that open space between all those buildings that are currently there and modifying the use of that to build a veterans park in that location and make other necessary changes that might affect some things already underway there. Okay? So, Michael, you want to hop in at this point, and
Yeah, I'll be glad
we'll
to.
continue to fill our fellow commissioners in.
The conversation was brought to me in communicating with Chris Ledford and David McKinney, who are leaders, members of our VFW post here in Madison County, about doing something more than just erecting a plaque at the courthouse lawn or putting a granite monument somewhere on the side of the road, to actually develop something that is a place where people would take great pride in bringing their family. Marshall has kind of a place already where they have flags and the granite monuments. This would be a park, a place where there's seating and walking, and it would be an acknowledgement to all of our veterans in Madison County. There may even be, VFW has looked at some other monument parks in other places where people, if they want to have a resident that was in a military, that was in a war, if they want to pay so much to have the name, a plaque with their name put on a big wall, that's a possibility. Community members buying brick with the family name on it to go in a floor, in a wall or into a walkway to help fund bringing about the changes. Somebody reached out to me some time ago about a particular person who was in a war and was wondering if we could do something for that person. And that kind of facilitated, why don't we do something for all of them? And I think everybody here, and I know especially you, Norris, this is something that's dear to you and to Dr. Goforth, is to be able to do that. So a park, a centrally located park, maybe even have architect come in and design based on what the VFW and the community would want, and then to solicit private investors. I think the Beach Glen project is a really good example of a private-public partnership where the community stepped in and facilitated the purchase of that residence in order to benefit the community there with the community center and the ball field. I think this is no different than that. The VFW is just looking for the commissioners to move forward and help and facilitate that, to support them in that endeavor. So, I think it's a great idea.
Agreed.
Greg?
Agreed.
Yeah. All right, well, gentlemen, if we have a consensus, we
I'll also
take this.
add just one more thing. Land's expensive, so if the county can provide something that's in
Absolutely.
good proximity, that's county property, it stays county property, it's a park that can be utilized by everyone, and that would take a huge amount of financial burden off of VFW trying to raise that amount of funding just to even do the land acquisition. So,
Well, in addition to having land, we can make some modifications to what's currently going on there and make that work. It is a good central location. We own it. And I think that if we do this right, we will find a lot of people who will want to take part in this. And it will give the public, not just the veterans, but others, an opportunity to help develop something. And you're right, the Beach Glen thing is an exact type of model that works. And I think, I could be disappointed, but I think we would have significant community participation. Yes.
and I think, Mr. Chair, just as a point of moving forward with it, because Norris is always about moving forward. If we talk about something, let's put it to this decision and do it, is that we authorize Norris as interim county manager and as also a military veteran himself, just to coordinate with Chris Ledford, the folks at VFW, to move forward with coming back to us with at least some type of plan, proposal, and then we can move forward with allocating funding for architect.
Make that motion.
I'll make that a motion.
Second.
Thank you, discussion.
Amen. All in favor?
Excellent. The next item is a resolution in support of the Madison County Public Schools. And this is in your packet. This is whereas the COVID-19 pandemic, Madison County Schools has safely guarded and maintained access to education for one of the county's most precious resources. 2,135 students and their families, providing both in-person and remote learning, as well as working tirelessly to ensure that 436 staff members have remained employed. And whereas resources have been utilized to add counselors, social workers, school nurses, and instructional specialists in reading and math to provide for educational components as well as physical and mental health of students, while ensuring each child's access to the tools necessary to learn and grow in a positive environment. And whereas grants and resources secured in collaboration with faith-based organizations, nonprofits, local fire departments have provided food, internet hotspots, and other necessities while consistently following state law and public health guidance to keep students and staff members safe, allowing for 188,150 breakfasts, 208,500 lunches to be served directly to students' homes, free of charge, and to supply each student and teacher a computer. Whereas weekly meetings have been conducted with school and healthcare officials, including county health department staff, to discuss COVID-19 data and provide monthly updates to the Board of Education so that informed decisions could be made, assisting to keep schools open and students and staff members safe. Whereas Madison County Schools developed one of the first pilot programs in North Carolina to provide rapid COVID-19 antigen tests in schools, allowing the district to make data-informed decisions for well-being of students and staff. That COVID-19 data included the number of positive cases, quarantines, and overall positivity rates, as well as vaccination opportunities continue to be made in the form of weekly updates. Whereas currently, and during the most challenging times of the pandemic, an academic standard above the state average in most content areas has been maintained. The school system has received recognition of numerous awards, ranking 15th out of the 115 school districts in the state of North Carolina in level proficiencies as measured by end-of-grade assessments for the school year 2021. And the selection of Brush Creek Elementary School as a National Blue Ribbon School of Exemplary Academic Performance by the U.S. Department of Education for the current school year. And 2 awards to the school's finance department for excellence in finance management from the Association of School Business Officials. Now therefore be it resolved that the Madison County Board of Commissioners recognizes Madison County Public Schools for past and current achievements during the COVID-19 pandemic and offers continued support to administrators and staff for their hard work and dedication to the students and families of Madison County. This is the 9th day of November, 2021. Mr. Chairman, I request that that be made part of the record and be approved as a resolution by the board. Second. Discussion.
It's very good. It's a good acknowledgement of all they have done.
They have done a good job under the circumstances. And our families in the community and the kids in the community. It's a community achievement.
The schools currently are, just for public information, have allocated funding to do playground renovations, and they're looking for community organizations, volunteers, starting, I think Brush Creek's already started. Our church is involved in it. French Broad Electric's been involved in it already, the sheriff's office, so it's a good opportunity to help them get this playground improved. I think it, as Dr. Gilbert, you mentioned, maybe a 6-day venture per each school playground to get that stuff up and going.
Yes.
So Mars Hill will have theirs next week if anybody's interested.
It's going to take some engineering types too eventually. There's enough bolts and screws and those things that will make my head spin.
You'll also note in your packet, we've been communicating, we're all monitoring the latest U.S. Department of Labor emergency temporary standards that we've been hearing about in the news. You've got some information on the latest stuff. Brooke and I will continue to keep you up to speed. And obviously, we will just follow what happens in that area. We have only one board appointment that we need to work with. We are returning to the one that we have had for some time. And we have no new applicants. And for the public's information, it is the Housing Authority Board vacant. Currently, previously, the position was held by a member from the Spring Creek community. And we have had no new applicants. I think all of us have been out actively.
I know we've worked hard to fill that, and I respect the fact that Chairman Nelson's want to try to keep somebody in the Spring Creek, Hot Spring community. That being said, that board's actively moving forward and working. I spoke with some of those folks this week as well. So I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and nominate David McKinney for that position.
Second.
And realize that there will be other opportunities as that board evolves and people come off of it. And I think we definitely want to try to keep that spread out through the community, through the county. And just knowing that the next position that comes available, that would be a perfect opportunity to go back and maybe give us some time, because I have actively solicited, and I know Chairman Snell.
I have to. Yeah, and I have that.
I think we need to continue to work towards that, but fill that slot for now. Just wait on the next.
When did we say the next open was?
Next year.
Next year.
And Mandy, you probably don't have that right in front of you when the next term would expire. In 20.
Next year.
Two, I believe you said.
I'm good.
Okay.
That gives us time to put out the conduct again.
I'm good with that. Discussion. All in favor?
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, Donnie, you're up.
I have three matters. The first one is an update on the appeal of the Madison Asphalt LLC versus Madison County case. The Court of Appeals rendered their decision in that matter, I believe, early last week. Basically, they affirmed the ruling by Judge Cabanas in Superior Court, effectively dismissing the individual landowner's appeal and affirming Judge Cabanas' order. So the permit that we consented to be issued is now granted. That case should be over. The landowners can file a petition for a rehearing if they so choose. That's just a legal procedure that is available to them. They must file that within 30 days, but for all effective purposes, that case is now over. There is a copy of the Court of Appeals decision, I believe, or documents that was mailed out. They notified us. The second matter is an update on the National Opioid Settlement. As we've been monitoring, that case is moving along. Of course, that is the $26 billion settlement with state and local governments. The states have now, the appropriate number of those entities have approved the settlement. So we moved into the second phase of it, which is the municipal local governments having to approve that. We have to do that by January the 2nd. They have rolled out a DocuSign program where all counties were supposed to be able to sign off on it and get those documents back in quickly. I received my package for Madison County on it in early October. I registered Madison County and been waiting each day for that package to come so that we can sign off on it and get it done at one of their regular meetings. got an email last week, which I provided to you in your materials from the Department of Justice that said, due to problems with the DocuSign procedure, we are sending you hard copies that if you want to present those to your board and get those signed and send them back to us, we will register you. So I've taken advantage of that. You would have seen participation agreements, one in the distributor settlement, that is with the three, that's the big one, the other one's the Jansa. So there is an accompanying resolution with that. Basically, this settlement is highly recommended for you to participate in. If you would consider that resolution, which would authorize either myself or the county manager to sign the participation and settlement agreements, if you would consider and pass that resolution, I will then sign the participation agreements. I'll scan and email those back to the DOJ. So Madison County should be in and counted as a positive vote as early as tomorrow afternoon.
You got the motion.
I'll make a motion.
We need you to pass the resolution.
I'll second. Discussion. All in favor? Deal.
All right, thank you for your efforts.
The final thing that I have is just simply an update on what I'm going to call Madison County versus Reed and Tide, which is what we commonly refer to as the zoo case. The judge issued basically an order finding the defendants being contempt that gave them a procedure under which they could purge themselves of the contempt. She set hearings on those. Their first hearing was on November the 4th. Norris and Mandy both appeared at that hearing. The attorney for the other side had a family emergency, was not there. We got an update that there are 230 animals identified at that site. As of that day, it had only been a week, but they had only found homes for 5 of those animals. They have until December the 8th to remove all of those animals. Otherwise, they will be potentially incarcerated. The judge was not very pleased with the progress and basically asked me to prepare an order that she is going to be hearing evidence at the next time it'll be heard, which is beyond December 1st.
So they did turn the list of animals in?
They did turn the list of animals in, which was a positive sign.
Website's still up though?
The website is still up, and from their perspective, I believe there's a potential violation of Judge Eggers' Rider order in what is presently on that website, and in consultation with the county manager, we're going to be proceeding and presenting that evidence to the judge on December 1st, which is the next hearing. So that's all I have.
All right.
Thank you for all your help.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing else. I move that we return to our recessed closed session.
May we have a,
Yes. Yeah. Well, time out. We're going to take a necessary break. I reset.
Thank all you folks for being here tonight. Staying with us, 10-minute recess.
Yeah.